hate puppies.
Good podcast.
I feel threatened.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Inside the Pallet House. We are recording live from a mustache check-in at Kindred Spirits tonight.
Outside the Pallet House.
We are actually outside of the Pallet House for a change. See, people say we can't adapt, we don't leave. But we're here. We've done something. A lot of the listeners have been complaining that we don't get out enough anyway these days, so glad to be out and
once,
about.
I agree with our awful listeners.
That was not nice, Troy. Those people pay our bills, or don't. It's a whole nother story. Or they could Venmo us cash, though.
Yeah, of course.
What is it, at ITPH
At Inside the Pallet House.
At Inside the Pallet House on Venmo. They can always do that. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I want to send a shout-out to Jason and Heather from Kindred Spirits. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Welcome.
Glad to have you on.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming out.
Yes, we're glad to be here. Heather, you are a Radford grad?
Yes.
I wore my Highlanders hat.
I like it.
A little shout-out
like it.
there. Like that. Now, actually, I think, Stu, you actually helped set this up, right?
Well, it was already a setup. The deal was already set up for the M4K check-in, and
Yep.
Kindred Spirit, Heather, and the guys are all nice enough to take care of us here. But Heather and I, we're Midlothian homegrown, and went to Midlothian High School together. So I reached out to her and said, "Hey, can we just come do our thing here?" And she was kind enough to say yes.
Nice.
Typical Stu fashion, wouldn't take
Yeah.
no. Just, no, come on,
I-
we got to do
the
this.
hard
You-
sell.
I'm not going to go into the badgering text chain I kept sending her.
Oh,
But
come on.
she was nice enough to say, "Yeah, we'll do whatever you guys want to do."
Well, I certainly appreciate you guys having us out tonight. I know the mustache crew was coming, as evident by the 50 mustaches I see in front of me, which is an odd look. At
A
any
startling
point.
lack of handlebar mustaches.
The problem with that is that we shave November 6th clean, so we only have a month. So if you can find someone who can truly Dali that thing in a month, then they're my hero.
Yeah, that guy
Lee-
would be a god here.
Lee's going strong right here. I mean, he's got a
Yeah.
full-on beard. I don't know. Could you pull off the handlebar
Oh,
in a month?
Jason's got a full mustache over
I mean,
there.
Jason, sorry.
Oh, no, I could, but my wife would shave it in the middle of the night.
Yeah. I usually have a full beard, but I shave for this event, and every time it gets out of control, wife's like, "You got to do something. That can't fly." And I'm with her on it, honestly.
What's your take on Heather? What's your take on the mustaches?
I could take or leave it.
Yeah. Does John ever wear one?
Yes.
He does.
I think I prefer the beard.
The full beard.
Yeah, I think it's a little,
Dated?
yeah, it's a little sketchy.
It is a little odd how the mustache was. Honestly, it was like a sign of privilege. Like, if you didn't have a mustache, you were a loser.
Yeah.
For like the 1800s, early 1900s. And then one day, somewhere, I guess in the 80s, we just said, we're not doing the mustache anymore.
Well, it peaked in the 80s. I mean, the Tom Selleck and everybody else
Yeah.
was there, and then
But then one day,
it wasn't.
it was gone.
Like 1988, somebody was like, "That's enough."
Yeah, it was like Guns N' Roses showed up and started moving us out of the hair bands and over to grunge. I think they're the first ones to do that. But then as soon as grunge hit, the mustache died.
Yeah.
It's very odd. So now we do it as a farce and raise money for children.
Yeah.
So we're going to break the fourth wall and let Heather and Jason know that, Kindred, this is my first time here, but this is Brendan's favorite local establishment.
This is actually my favorite of the local breweries. I come here fairly often. Now, there's two reasons for that.
Yeah, that was going to be my question.
Well, one is proximity.
Okay.
You guys are really close to my house, so
Perfect.
I can get here pretty quickly, pretty easily. But two, your beers are fantastic. I mean, across the board, all the beers you make are great. And since the addition of the new patio, and there's always music here for the most part, unless some podcast shows up and ruins it for everybody else. You know, it's a great vibe here. You guys have done some amazing stuff in a rather short amount of time. I mean, how long ago did you open?
We opened August 2016.
Wow.
So you've made a name for yourself in that short amount of time, which is really impressive. Heather, you're one of the part owners or one of the owners?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And Jason, you are the brewer?
No, I'm the GM and also owner.
Oh,
okay, so you're
Okay.
also an owner. So we
Gotcha.
got two owners here.
My bad. I thought you were one of the brewers.
So
No, I
We
was,
tried to get Lee, who's the brewer, but he's a little shy.
yeah.
Okay.
So he
I
said
was
no.
talking to him at the bar, and I was like, "Come on, you can give 2 cents." He's like, "No." I'm like, "Come on, 1 cent."
Just
Then he-
didn't-
then he
sounds
had
like
to
a
go
brewer, right?
had to
Like
go
wants to
change
be
a
in the
keg.
back. Yeah, wants to be in the back doing his thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That makes sense.
And he's a
So-
great brewer, so we're just gonna let him do that.
Obviously, we were going to heap some praise, and we'll continue. But so we do a beer tasting every week. We bring a different beer every week. Sometimes it's local. Sometimes in Brendan's travels, he'll pick something up. And I have an awful memory, so if I did the same beer 3 weeks later, I wouldn't remember. But Brendan brought up something we were on the way over here tonight. The beer tasting we do, we call it a deli because we usually have another guy here named Ely, and he's a super. He's not a beer
It's
snob.
a pain in the ass.
Yeah. He doesn't like any beer, especially IPAs. Like,
He cannot stand an IPA. Like
Yeah.
literally hates IPAs. Thinks that the entire revolution of IPAs is the worst thing that ever happened to beer. Now his favorite beer currently is Natter Day.
Yeah.
So that'll give
So
you.
why would you even hang out with this guy?
He's a Marine, and we feel obligated.
Okay.
He's done his part.
He's on the podcast, but he won't listen back to this, so
Yes.
we're not scared.
so we call it a deli, DELI, for does Ely like it? Because we're always trying to find a beer that Ely likes. So we've been doing this for years, and a while ago we brought in, not we, Brendan or someone brought
Actually, it
in
was a listener that brought in Headspace.
Headspace.
And wanted us to try it. And I was like, well, you're screwed because Ely doesn't like IPAs. You're going to lose. And I felt bad because here we are promoting, my favorite local brewery, and unfortunately I know it's going to fail because they brought in IPA. I'm not kidding you. It actually won a deli. He
Yes.
liked it. And it was
It's
the
very
ultimate
rare.
feather in my cap to say, holy crap, he actually liked an IPA.
So I can't tell you how many customers in the 3 years that I've had that exact same experience with.
Yeah.
They come in and they're like, I
Really?
only drink stouts, I only drink brown ales, I only drink Mick Ultra, whatever it is. And I was like, you have to try this Headspace. That's why we brewed it. It's an IPA that works for a true IPA lover.
Yep.
But it's soft enough and it's fruity enough and the bitterness is low enough that you can almost please just about everybody with it.
Yeah, and where I am on the spectrum, I'm between the Elys and the
You
Brendans of the
finally
world.
admitted you're on the spectrum.
That's right. So I'm not
I knew it.
I'm not an IPA head because I don't like the skunk that most of them leave, and that's one of the things. Just had my first sip of Headspace, and that's one of the things I harken back to. It doesn't have that. Oh my God, I don't want to talk to somebody because I got a million funks going on in my mouth right now, and
So can we do this? Can we drink the Headspace?
yeah,
or we
I'm
gotta-
drinking mine.
I have a question, though. So 2016, you opened up. When did you guys come up with Headspace?
I'll let.
Okay, so long story short, Lee, who we mentioned a minute ago, who's our head brewer, when my brother and I first sort of brainstormed this project, we got everything together, we found investors, yada, yada, yada. The next thing was finding a brewer. Now, I brew beer, but I'm not a brewer. I can't make a red sauce the same way twice, much less be able to brew the same beer over and over and over again. So I'd known Lee for 10 years. He was a shift brewer at Legend for the 5 years previous to coming on board here.
Okay.
So,
Another local legendary.
Yeah,
Pardon
exactly.
the
Can
pun,
we be
watering
honest,
hole.
though? They were the godfather
Yeah.
of the Richmond beer scene.
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt.
And it kind of broke my heart when the other breweries showed up and everyone was like, oh, we have a craft beer scene. I was like, where have you
Oh,
guys
they got
been?
leapfrogged for sure.
But they had been there
Yep.
before the bubble. I mean, they were
Yeah.
there when, like, Rich Brow was around. And
Yeah.
Rich Brow
Yeah.
didn't make it, unfortunately.
So we came to an agreement with Lee, he was going to become our brewer once we put all this together. So he and I started brewing test batches in my garage. And this was actually the very first beer that we brewed together. I told
no
him,
way.
yeah.
Really?
This is
Damn.
from the jump. Headspace
from
has
jump.
existed.
So I told him what I was looking for in a beer.
Yep.
Quick little backstory: I've been in the wine and beer business my entire career, in some form or fashion. Never production, but retail, distribution, all this stuff. So I have an idea of what
Sure.
the customer is looking for. So I laid out, I said, I want it rich and juicy, but not over the top. It doesn't need to be sweet, but I don't want it bitter. And he came up with this recipe, and it was the very first beer that we brewed. We've made a few tweaks here or there in the almost 6 years since we first brewed it, but it's essentially the same beer.
So you touched on something, and you kind of just touched on it again. I've always wondered about this. So you said you can't make a red sauce the same twice, right? Like oftentimes it's difficult to match or mirror exactly what you had done. And with beers, I don't think people realize that it does change from time to time. You get different hops, you get different barley, different malts. The yeast should stay the same, right? I mean, you know where you get, but I digress. But beers do change from time to time, and that's what I thought was interesting about this is we were going to be trying the Headspace again tonight, and I don't know that it's the same. How do you maintain consistency from batch to batch year over year?
It's the toughest part about brewing beer, truly. And if you're going to try and sell beer outside of your own little neighborhood,
Yep.
Consistency is key. And trying to maintain that consistency as best you can is very difficult.
That's where the macro brews, in my opinion, should get a little more credit. Like, they're pumping out big quantities, and they're keeping it consistent across the board.
When people ask me what's the best brewery in the world, it's Budweiser.
Yeah.
You're damn right. Beechwood aging. There it is.
It's
doesn't-
funny you say that.
It doesn't matter what brewery it's brewed in around the world, and they have 30-some breweries around the world.
Yeah.
If you pick up a Bud Heavy in Shanghai or Detroit, that beer tastes the same.
Yeah.
And that's
Hell of impressive.
freaking impossible to pull off
Yeah.
on that scale. I mean, Budweiser dumps more beer down a drain in a day than I'm going to produce in 5 years. It's insane.
That's
what
crazy.
they do.
Damn.
So that quality and that consistency is incredible. On a much smaller scale like we do, it's attention to detail makes the most difference. So there's always going to be variations, especially with hops, which
Yeah.
is what creates the most flavor and aroma for the beer itself.
Yeah.
So those are going to differ from crop year to crop year. So we hope to be able to pick up on those differences, and there may be a little bit of variation, but it's taking notes. We have the brewers have a program to manage everything that goes on, but they also take handwritten notes for every batch of beer that goes through the system, so that they're able to go, well, why did this one taste a little weird? Well, all right, I was 3 minutes late adding the hops on this batch. Yeah, it really is that finite to try and figure out
Crazy.
where things could change.
It's always
Damn.
been. I taste it more in like seasonal varieties. Like if somebody's making a winter beer or a summer beer, I tend to notice differences there because they're not sourcing it year round, and I find that that's where I can find deviations when it's not a steady beer. Because I assume you know what the hop should smell like before it goes into the boil.
Yeah, and there's so many, especially when you get into seasonals, because that's when breweries decide to add the most random stuff to a beer.
Yep.
And, whether it's, baby ginger root or whatever else, those sorts of things are going to be different every year. And I always go back to, I spent a lot of my time in the wine business and getting yelled at by customers because this vintage tastes different than last vintage. I was like, well,
It's a great.
it's a natural product. There's so many variables to go into just the grape growing itself, not counting the vinification of the grape at the end process, that it's always going to be different. And the variables aren't as great in making beer, but the opportunities to expand upon those are
So
infinitesimal.
where do you guys source your ingredients? Are they coming all over or local?
Yeah, all over. We try and do some local stuff. Unfortunately, local quality doesn't match local price.
Yeah, there's something to be said for trying to keep it so local.
Right. So we do some stuff. We've got a winter ale coming out in a couple of weeks, where all the specialty grains that we used came from Murphy and Rood, which is a malt house. I believe they're in Charlottesville. The yeast came from RVA Yeast Labs here in town. all the base malt comes from Wisconsin, I believe it's where we get all our base malt. So it's good stuff. It's different stuff, but it's, if we're doing something on a large scale, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's
Man.
wild. So you had talked about the wine business. I find that interesting because people don't recognize that even like the weather can change and you can force you to harvest early, force you to harvest late. The water might not be right. The grapes aren't as juicy. I mean, that one, wildly different. I mean, you can go to the finest winery in the world and you're still going to have batches that aren't that great. I mean, just because God stepped in and said, not this year, buddy. Unfortunately, like that Caymus isn't what you thought it was going to be.
I mean, there are wine regions in the world, mostly in the old world wine regions in Europe and places like that. They won't release wines in some years.
Just flat out, it's not worth the money to put our
Doesn't
name
meet
on
their
that.
quality control.
Right, because they also know that next year, if it's decent, we can charge double.
I've come across that.
I mean, there's ridiculous archaic laws that go into all of those regulations for old world wines, but part of the reason I moved out of wine and into beer was the restrictions on wine. It's very finite. You have grapes, you have the yeast that you can use, and you have the fermentation vessel. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, once you get out of Germany, you can play with beer a little bit. You got the purification laws. You can't mess with that.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's like this is what the beer is going to be. This is how it's made. But you get into America and we're like, this beer is great because it's got beets. You never know what the hell you're going to get.
Exactly.
So,
there's no real rules. There's no real ceiling on what you can decide you want to do to make a beer.
Just your imagination.
Nothing more American than American beer.
Yeah.
Because we can do whatever we want.
So, Heather,
freedom.
I kind of know why he's gotten into it, but what caused you guys to get into what made you jump?
So we were one of the private investors that came in the beginning, and then after a year of getting into it, the business started growing, and we were looking for a sales force and marketing and private events, and that's where I came in. So I do all the sales and private events for Kindred.
Okay, nice. Are you in charge of the great food trucks that show up here?
Well, not fully. Jason and I kind of tag team food trucks.
And do y'all have a lot of private events here? Y'all
We do,
it
yes.
a lot?
Yeah, so like we're doing a holiday special right now. No rental fees during the week, and on the weekends we give you 50% off rental fees.
Nice.
So
Very nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and Heather's got 9 events, I think, booked in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be pretty insane in here
the
next month.
2 weeks, yeah, and I think we booked another one today.
So
Nice.
I've noticed some of these breweries are venturing out into the food side. Are you guys? Is that something you guys are? I notice you do
Pizza by
sell
the
pizza
slice.
and stuff, but like, are you guys ever thinking about going into the food side? It sounds like a whole nother animal. I know. Speaking of archaic laws, I know Virginia has tons of archaic.
Yeah, you're in the worst state when it comes to archaic alcohol laws.
I'm never going to say no,
Yeah.
but
I know once you start selling food, you have to meet a different level of.
When you start selling food, you bring the health department into the mix. Right now, we're governed by the Virginia Department of Agriculture, and they're only concerned with sort of basic cleanliness stuff and more safety stuff and stuff on the production side. When you bring the health department in, it's a whole different thing. Plus the amount of overhead and staff that comes into to doing any sort of food service business.
And correct me if I'm wrong, like you have to sell, once you do food, you have to sell a certain amount of food.
Not at a brewery.
That only comes into effect if you're selling liquor.
Okay, so if it's
there's
just wine
percentages
and
coming
beer,
in.
it's just,
Yeah.
okay.
So in 2012, Hardywood was influential in pushing through SB 604, which said at that point, before that, a brewery could only sorry, phone call.
What the fuck?
Exactly. Oh, can I say fuck?
Oh, yeah.
This is
sorry.
This is
Nice. You should have told me that from the get-go.
Oh, I like to see how long you can hold out.
We're not on
Now-
this
now
is
I
not.
can tell people you can listen to the first 20 minutes with your kids. But yeah, fuck it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're not on the Disney app.
Okay, so before SB 604 went through, breweries were only allowed to give away samples and sell beer to go. Otherwise, you had to have food.
Okay.
So when 6 and 4 went through, breweries are now able to sell their beers by the pint in-house without having to have any food component. That was the big...
That changed the game.
That changed the game. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys have talked about
Sure.
this. So that changed the game in the state. You know, when Hardywood passed that bill, there were it was either 13 or 16 breweries in the state.
Wow.
When we got our Virginia ABC license, I think we were 115 or 116. And I think we're getting close to about 300 licensed
In Virginia.
brewery, cidery, meaderies in the state.
How long ago did that law go into effect that changed it?
That was 2012.
That was 2012?
Yeah.
I remember
that's
back in
awesome.
the late 90s going to Legend, and they had just built that outside deck. And you basically got your beer and you went and you sat on the deck, and that's all. They didn't have any food or anything there.
Right, because you were buying from the speakeasy downstairs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you went down the stairs, got your beer, and walked back up and sat on the deck. And the guys I was with, they were older than me. They were like, "This deck is awesome. You used to just have to sit there with like a little 6-top bar and or stand around and drink your beer in that little speakeasy."
Like a child.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Unbelievable.
And now they have the whole restaurant side of it and everything. It's just
I ran into a place that might be, well, in a way, it's as archaic as Virginia. I was in Florida not long ago, and I met a guy who owned a bar named the Justice in Jacksonville. And in order to get a liquor license there, you have to deal with the state. The state can give out but so many liquor licenses. And apparently the church moved in, bought up all the liquor licenses because they were like $15,000, for a liquor license. So they bought all the remaining. There's a finite amount of liquor licenses because they want to control the amount of bars that are serving liquor in the area. So now what the church has done is they will sell you a liquor license, but just like if you're getting married, you got to go and do counseling for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Like you gotta prove to them that like you give a shit if you're gonna get married in their church. I had to do this when I got married to my wife. I had to meet with like a couple that was within the church every week. We had to sit down at their house and like eat a little food and talk. This was heartbreaking. Sidebar. When it was all said and done, they reported back to like the priest what their belief was of our coupling.
And they said no. Hell no.
They said the wife is great. They said we don't necessarily believe that he is the right man. And I was like, you son of a bitch. Like,
so they nailed it?
Oh, they nailed it. They go, we think he drinks too much. We think that he, and she's full of shit because she's a drinker too. Like she's probably drinking right now at home solo.
Your wife
At
played
least
him.
I'm surrounded by mustaches.
She played him. You didn't.
Yeah, and I didn't play him. I was just being honest. And they were like, well, he seems to care a lot about his friends and going out drinking and stuff. And that could be a problem. My wife's like, it's true. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is this? We're doing marriage counseling 6 months prior to the marriage? But I digress.
It's good to know Florida has these laws where there's only X amount of liquor licenses because they're running such a tight ship down there. Nothing ever goes wrong.
Yeah.
So
You
they're
can go
obviously
get
killing it.
Pain meds at a ridiculous rate and clean needles.
But
God
what that
forbid.
leads to is I've had some friends that have had businesses down there, and you get to the point where if you want to buy a liquor license,
Yeah, the church owns it.
it costs you a couple $100,000.
That's exactly
I mean,
it.
if
They
you want to
turned it
open
in-
up a neighborhood bar.
That sounds like a
15
mob. That sounds like
it
the
is
mob
a
run.
mob.
Florida.
Well,
Yeah.
it's-
Well, there's no zoning laws.
It's
So
the-
you can have a house, a church, a bar. It's just.
But
in certain
unfortunately, the
You
church
forgot
is
the
selling.
strip club.
yeah, exactly.
It was implied. We said Florida, but this guy was beholden to. He had to buy his liquor license from the church, and the church wanted multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars to give him a liquor license. So he was like, "Screw this! I'm not getting a liquor license. I already have the ability to sell wine." So what he started doing is getting like,
Oh, this is your guy. I'm just now coming
Yeah.
around on this. Okay.
he was getting high proof wines.
I love this.
And making cocktails with them. And so he was making cocktails with wines, and that was his kind of way around it. Well, what he discovered was he one day on a joke bought Mad Dog 2020.
Delicious.
And delicious.
Lovely.
So he has this shit behind the bar.
Yeah, Jason was in the wine world. He understands all the good ones.
So I assume he had Boone's Farm.
He damn well better have Boone's
Cisco.
Farm. And Cisco is a dangerous
Night
street.
Train.
Night Train is fun. If we want to go down the line, it's Wild Irish Rose.
Yes. I was
Number
saying you
one.
forgot about Wild
That's
Irish.
the best. Then I would give it to Mad Dog. Then I'm a Thunderbird guy.
Thunderbird and Night
So,
Train
you
together.
know,
Quick story: when I got into the wine business in 1996, Wild Irish Rose was still the number one selling
yeah.
wine in the country.
As well as
I
should
believe
be.
it.
It's
Well,
a
yeah.
fine red wine. They didn't fuck with any. They had a lot of sulfates, but they didn't bring in like cherry flavors and bullshit.
You
You're
can buy it in any
I'm-
7-Eleven.
I'm getting notes of abuse. You know, it's like it's a very interesting.
This year's has extra sadness.
yeah. I just feel like I want to sit on the corner and not work today. Enjoy your wild eye.
Well, that was
But-
my first introduction to Wild Irish was 92 at Radford.
Yep.
Ugh.
Hey,
I think it's most everyone's.
you want to
first
bring that full circle? My first introduction to Wild Eye is when this dude graced my door for the first time. He walked in coming out of the Navy, walks in with 2 bottles of Wild Irish Rose, and I think, who the fuck is this guy? And he's like, oh, we'll be friends by the end of this bottle. Sure enough, he was spot on. And then by the
Good
end of the
times.
night, we were fighting everyone else as a team.
Yes.
It's like
That's the way it
unified
works.
group. That's
Yes.
Wild Irish Rose.
brothers.
Yes.
But so what this guy discovered was Mad Dog became a top seller for him in a bar that doesn't have liquor.
Well, I just want to let you know it's not called Mad Dog anymore.
Mogan
found-
David?
It's MD.
MD, yeah.
Oh, it's like
I kept-
KFC now? It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
Kentucky
yeah.
Fried Chicken?
Well, I don't know. I kept saying, I was like, why are you drinking Mad Dog? This is going to kill you.
Well,
No,
it-
it's MD. It's all good.
And
don't
she's
think it-
like, it's not Mad Dog. It's MD, Mom.
I don't think it ever.
Oh, God.
Your kids are drinking Mad Dog?
The one in college.
The one in college?
I don't think
Oh.
it ever
that's
was
where it
Mad
happens.
Dog.
Is it
I think
UVA?
that's a nickname.
They
I think
allow
it was
that at
always
UVA?
Mogan David.
No, Mogan David's the
Yeah.
they produce
It was
it.
always MD
That's the-
2020,
it was
but
Mad Dog
I think we
2020.
just called it Mad Dog. I don't think Mad Dog was ever on.
No, it was
the-
never. It was always
Yeah.
MD
to,
2020.
Yeah.
to Heather's point,
Okay.
all the kids are shortening everything.
Well,
You
yeah,
know,
it's
it's not
emoji
home-
world.
It's not
I just want us
homecoming.
to be
it's-
cool, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, LOL.
Yeah.
It's not homecoming. It's Hoko. It's
Yeah.
not Mad Dog. It's MD.
Yep.
They don't have enough time to text.
So anyway, this guy in Jacksonville,
He's making a killing
but
on Mad
you were
Dog.
telling us he only does Mad Dog, right?
Well, no. So he still has other wines that
Oh,
he
I thought
makes.
he was like Mad Dog
he makes
centric.
he makes cocktails with it. But what he noticed was people were coming in and he was selling it by the glass, and they were like, "Let me buy the bottle," and so people kept buying Mad Dog. It has completely gotten rid of any liquor sales or deficiency in his budgets. He's selling Mad Dog like crazy to all of the
Was it
college kids
frozen
that
drinks
come
or
in.
something with it?
Yeah, so he was making frozen drinks with wines. He was making like mimosas, obviously, with wines. But then he started creating cocktails with wines that were like high
Cut all the
proof.
overhead. Instead of $20 bottles, he's buying $2 bottles.
But he's selling $10 bottles of Mad Dog.
Yeah.
And everybody's standing around in the group passing it around. And he was like, I don't need their $250,000 liquor license. I have discovered Mad Dog. And he's killing it. You go in there, and the place is full of young people playing pinball, drinking Mad Dog, having a blast.
That's the American dream.
It's amazing. He found a loophole against the church's bureaucracy. Well, Florida's bureaucracy, church's mob.
Yeah.
He was able to pull it off. And
And-
I'm ecstatic for him.
To Brendan's point now, if you go into a local convenience store now, they've got the 75 milliliter bottles that look like the liquor, but they're labeled to look like, Smirnoff or
And they're great.
bourbon.
great
And they're
wine.
like
And they're
42 proof or something. Whatever the law is, it's the maximum allowable amount.
kind of
Right,
ridiculous.
but it's a malt beverage. It's not a distilled beverage.
It's
You're
I guess
damn
our-
right.
I thought it was made of-
Loopholes.
Was it grapes? I thought it was wine.
made with, it was grape drink. It was grape, white grape,
Well,
white grape
y'all
wine.
would know better than what is the distinguishing between a wine, a malt liquor, and a beer? How did it become a
Well,
malt?
it's the process.
So it
right.
literally just comes down to the process.
It's just the process. So, beer, obviously, you steep the grains to extract the sugars. You add the yeast, and that's how you get the alcohol. Right. So, in wine, it's strictly grapes,
Yeah.
or it could be fruit, but grapes obviously provide the most sugar.
So if I make a wine, quote unquote, with apples, well, no,
Strawberries.
apples, but you could
use
call that a wine
apricot.
if you just
Oh, yeah.
you just use the
Right,
natural
but
sugars
you're
in
just,
the fruit.
There's no boiling process. There's nothing. You just add yeast to the fruit juice.
And that
that's it.
creates the alcohol.
Right. So then,
So this is why wine can be made in the back of a toilet.
Yes.
Pro tip:
yeah, there you go.
you just get some fruits, you mash
If
it
you
up,
ever
you
get
add some
10 to
yeast,
15,
put it in the back of
yeah.
your toilet. You wait a month, 2 months, and then boom,
Right.
you and your friends are having a party in the yard.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
No,
and then
well, I
somebody
mean, if it
flushes,
comes
and
to
you're like, "Oh, shit!
mother.
I just lost my entire month."
This is how you make G-pop enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So then, yeah, obviously distilling is boiling what's already been fermented, and you're basically pulling the pure alcohol out.
And that's where you get the moonshines made with the different fruits.
So that's what the
stuff.
coil is. That's the alcohol
Yes.
going up the coil because it
And then
evaporates
rapidly
and wraps
cooling
around.
it.
I got it.
Yep.
I'm learning.
So
See?
It's education.
why don't we come back full circle and figure out what we think about this headspace?
Actually, so I've already had most of a goblet here, so I've already kind of formulated my opinion.
Why don't you lead off then?
So I'm always shocked at how good this is. The thing that I love about this beer is it smells and moves like an IPA, but it doesn't pack that lingering punch, I guess, of an IPA that's poorly done, I guess I would say. It's got a lot of juiciness to it that's more like the New England style, but without the haze. So what is it that has created the juiciness without the haze?
So,
and I just heard a shatter back there, and
Boom.
I noticed the two people who own the place spun around like, damn it.
so it's whenever I think about a beer, I always I try and reverse engineer it.
Okay.
Right. So I think about what is it that I want to drink, and then I figure out how to get there backwards. So with this beer, like I said earlier, I wanted it soft and fruity.
Yep.
Juicy, but not over the top sweet juicy.
But there's Citra hops in there, right? Or is there no Citra hops?
No, it's mostly Mosaic and just a little bit of Citra. But the dry hop, the dry hop is all Mosaic, which is
so
where
that's
you're going to get
nose.
which where you're going to get the nose, and a good punch of the flavor comes through the dry hop too. So when we created this beer, New England IPAs hadn't really moved out of New England yet.
Sure.
Right. So you had, Heady Topper. Sip of Sunshine at that point.
Yep.
And, maybe a couple of others that were doing it, and, places like Trillium and Treehouse. And they were just getting there at this point. So but you're talking 4.5, 5 years ago, and the landscape has changed dramatically since then.
Sure.
And, at the time I remember doing, and I still get teased about this, I remember doing an interview for I can't remember what local publication it was, but at the time, like, the Veil hadn't opened, the Answer hadn't opened.
Which the Veil is a direct descendant from the Heady Topper universe, right?
That's
debatable. No, that's why.
No, it's debatable.
That's why I
asked. He spent a lot of time working at a handful of the most desirable breweries still in the world.
Yeah.
He spent a little time at Cantillon. He spent a little time at Hale Farmstead. He spent a little time at The Alchemist. But sort of in, like, internship roles, never necessarily as a brewer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at one of those places he spent a couple months as a brewer. The other times it was like internship. It's great. I mean, he
honestly,
obviously learned.
The buzz on the street, right, where you get people wrapped around, they're like, this guy was the right-hand man. I'm just telling you how the story has
I know what the hype is
over time.
I know what the hype is.
It's marketing.
But it's, because it's like a game of telephone. I mean, this happens to everybody. I mean, the stories get told. I mean, Jason invented Pliny the Elder. No one knows that, but now he's here. See, I can just
don't let my secrets out.
I'm just saying, I can start rumors. I can start rumors.
Whatever we say is true.
That is the way it works.
Yeah, that's exactly
I figured that
right.
out.
We look important.
So, good job on Pliny, and good job on Heady Topper.
So what the Veil was able to do and what they continued to do, I don't think has ever been done in the beer industry anywhere. There's a couple places that have come close, like, obviously Treehouse, Other Half, Monkish. Some of these places have been able to build that hype and maintain that hype. But I don't know that anybody has done it like Veil.
It was shocking how quickly that became a thing. I mean, I was blown away because, in all honesty, I find their beers to be good, not great.
I'm with you on that. They're not my favorite.
I don't see a lot of variation. These are my words. Nobody here. These are my words.
I'm not disagreeing.
I find that their beers are good. The variation for them to have a Tuesday release every time. What's the variation? Outside of making this the white Miata, the green Miata, the blue Miata. I love Miatas.
Red Miata.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the Miata guy.
I happen to have a Miata, so I'm partial to the Miata beers.
I had a Miata.
Respect.
Oh, that
Thank
sounds
you,
about
Heather.
right.
That does.
The woman at the table had a Miata.
Heather, Brendan, and hairdressers. We had Miatas. It's fine. It does not offend me at all. Did you love your Miata?
I did, but I had to sell it because we lived out in the country and it couldn't make it up the driveway.
What the fuck kind of grade did you have on your driveway? The Miata is the most powerful four-cylinder engine ever made. And it's got 3 pounds. I mean, you can't even get it up the hill.
Oh, it had so much power, it just kept breaking loose, I'm sure.
But you enjoyed your time in the Miata, right?
I did.
I am going to go down this road for
Do you
just a
still
moment.
have a Miata?
I have
Oh,
a
yeah.
1995 Miata in the driveway. It's an M edition because I'm a grown-up. It's a fantastic car. But the guy who had it before me supercharged it, and, like, he went nuts. And I thought, that's the Miata for me, like,
Now,
right there. And I love it.
Heather, the image of the Miata you have in your head as he's talking doesn't look anything like that.
Yeah, this guy put like ground effects on it. He changed it up to the point that I was like in market for a Porsche Boxster or a Miata. And when I saw this guy's Miata, I was like, well, that's a third of the price of the Porsche Boxster. And it's got a supercharger. So I was like, you know what? I could do Fast and Furious. I like to drift or dream of drifting. I don't know how to. But yeah, I bought the Miata. So I'm glad that we have Miatas and Radford in common and beer. Boom. Trifecta. We're friends.
Perfect.
It just happened. I'm psyched about this. This is good.
I have a question for the two of you. What is there a cool story, there maybe not, about just the name Kindred Spirit and how you name your beers and stuff like that? Or is that just
Fist
shooting from the
fight.
hip?
I'm going to need another beer for this one.
Oh, this is a deep one, huh?
So
I could just make it up. I can tell you how.
I've been trying to come up with a cool story since the beginning.
Yeah.
Long story short, my brother, who was the original partner with me on this whole thing, we went back and forth for months trying to come up with a name for
And
Kindred
it's one
Spirit.
of those things I would assume it's like I'm not a marketing guy, and like when we did our logo and stuff, like it's like I can't draw and I just know it when I see it,
It's a
right?
dope
like,
logo.
It is
Just saying.
dope.
It's a pretty good logo. So is that how it worked for you? Like you guys are just probably
So we went back and forth just for the name of the brewery, back and forth for months, and could never agree. At this point,
What didn't make the cut? What didn't make the cut? Do you even remember?
There's nothing.
And it's got to be available. That's
well,
the-
that was the other thing.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
'cause
that's
you
it.
think
At
it sounds
this
cool.
point- right. So
I've got it, legend. Oh wait,
so
Anheuser-Busch.
and this was before we'd even gotten any investors on board. This was
early.
like early trying to write the business plan part of it. So I was working at Total Wine. On my way out the door one day going home, I grabbed the new Beer Advocate magazine.
Sure.
I'm going to read it when I got home. I don't know if you
Yeah.
guys have read the magazine. In the beginning, there's a segment called Kindred Spirits.
So that's literally where it came from?
So I looked at it, and I'm like, well, that kind of works. You know, we're brothers, we're kin.
Yeah.
We want a family-style atmosphere.
Nice.
You know, we want to be open to everybody. And so I'm like, Thought about it for a couple minutes. I Googled it to make sure it wasn't taken.
Didn't come up. You're
And
like,
at the-
yes.
and
I
at
know
the
this
ti-
is taken. I know this is taken.
At the time,
No,
it
wait,
wasn't.
It's not taken.
I texted my brother, and I go, hey, man, we're Kindred Spirits. He goes, you know what? Goddamn right we are.
That's good.
And
I can respect
That's
that.
great.
And that's the way
It's
it
a
came.
cool name.
So
It's a cool story.
No, so what's the good story? No, I'm just-
So
I thought he was going to say, we're jumping out of a plane, right?
always wonder how they come up with beer names. Stu's our
He's our
podcast
marketing
guy. He breaks down the look of cans and the names and stuff like that.
He
And
always
this is
comments on the marketing. Like,
and
if he
this is
doesn't
a-
like the label, it doesn't
Yeah.
make the cut with him.
so
this is a cool label and a cool name.
so
Headspace.
headspace itself is actually a brewing term.
Okay.
Headspace refers to the
The headspace.
the
I never
available
thought of that.
I never please.
It makes sense.
the available space in a tank from the top of the liquid to the top
Yeah.
of the tank. That's considered the headspace. That's simply where I came up with the name for the beer.
Wow.
But it takes on
Interesting.
a whole different
Well,
vibe.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it
Get your
it
head in the
does.
right space.
No, but that's how I
Yeah,
always
right.
looked at it. I'm like, the headspace allows me to get into a positive headspace. And
Right,
this
so
is where I want to be.
We're working on and actually finalizing a marketing campaign on finding your headspace
Nice.
that we're going to roll out.
And that's what
sometime
matters.
in the next
if
month
you
or
can,
so.
if the name lends itself, like even though to you it's a technical name because it worked for what you're doing, it has that double meaning, and it lived on.
Yeah, they could go. I get in the right headspace after I have this.
Exactly.
So I stand by the fact this is a deli winner. I'm just going to put that out there because I was on it and we got sidetracked. I love this beer. It's so easy. I think it's because of the dry hopping. I think it's when you guys would know better than I, but I think when you boil it more, the more hops, then it tends to lend itself to the bitterness. But if you do the dry hop, it tends to put it on
So
the nose.
there's some simple hard and fast rules when it comes to using hops in brewing. And if you guys cook, and I did bring up a red sauce before for the same reason. So I've always used this analogy whenever I've talked to people about brewing. So the earlier on in the process you use the hops, the more base flavors and bitterness and acidity that you bring out.
Yep.
The longer in the process that you wait to use the hops, the more flavor and aroma that you get. So we use it's pretty minimal hops in the boil and in the whirlpool for headspace, and it's a good bit of it is all in the dry hopping, which is on the cold side. So at that point, you're getting all the flavor and aroma. The beer that I'm going to go and pull for you guys off the tank here in a second.
Yep.
No hops in the boil at all. A little bit in the whirlpool and a shitload in the dry hop.
Cool.
Really? So it's going to be. Oh, now I'm really excited because I find that those tend to be the IPAs I like more.
Right.
Is when you dry hop it as opposed to just throw it in at the beginning and develop all that. I also find that it adds almost too much hop when you put it in early. In my estimation.
It goes back to what you're looking for. What is it that you want to drink? So we have a guy. His name's Ken. He does a lot of our pilot beers right now. He's fresh into learning how to brew. He spent a lot of time working in the wine business. He and I worked together for a long time. So he comes to me with recipes all the time, and I look at it and I go, well, it looks pretty good, but what is it that you're trying to shoot for? And do you need to have these hops here?
Yeah.
Right. Do you need to have these hops in the boil because you're brewing a raspberry blonde ale?
Yeah, because now you're going to complicate the raspberry.
Right. And are you just putting in hops that don't matter, aren't going to make a difference in the end beer? So it's those sorts of simple things where you look at a beer that it matters. What is it you're trying to get to at the end?
Yeah.
Jason's all about reverse engineering, and I like it. Like it's a good way to look
at it. But I do too.
Like
if you're the first person to do it, then you got to figure it out from the ground up. But if you know what you like, then you can back it in.
Yeah.
You can get to the right combination. So
I
love it, man. This is honestly, like I said, it may be one of the only IPAs that's ever won a Deli Award. I know it sounds like I'm just blowing smoke, but it's very.
I've got to meet this guy now.
Yeah, he's a curmudgeon at best. But he is a lot of fun, and why he's always been on the podcast. I was joking about it earlier that he's a Marine, but the truth is, he often sees things differently than we do.
Yes.
And there's nothing worse than just two people high-fiving for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He tends to be like, "You're an idiot," and I'm like, "Ooh, expand."
That's how the podcast started. Me and Brendan just telling each other how awesome we were for a while.
Didn't get a lot of listeners.
And then we got Haley on, and he would just tear us apart. We're like, okay. And then we had somebody to bounce something off. So
we've added
high
Stu,
praise.
and Stu's kind of
I'm an afterthought.
Stu's the newest addition, and he's been a nice stand-in for Ely.
All right, so you want to give me 5 minutes? I'll go grab some of that Marine Bright.
Absolutely.
So, Heather, who comes up with the marketing or these designs for most of the cans?
So we have a private person or private artist that does all of our logos for us.
Okay, nice.
But some of the new ones that are coming out, we have a collaboration of some of the owners and staff that will give input on what they're thinking it should be like, and then we hand it over to the artist. And
do you have anything that's your baby that you've done, or
this is mine?
Is this the new one that he's getting?
Well, yeah. We let a couple of people put in for names, and I don't know how I got chosen, but we let all the board members vote on what name they would like. So I actually got Merry and Bright, which is the next beer we're going to taste.
Merry and Bright. Okay.
Yep, that'll be canning tomorrow and shipping out with our distributor on Friday.
Oh, so this is going to be readily available to the public outside of the brewery?
Oh, yeah.
Where can we pick it up at?
You can pick it up at Costco.
Nice.
Yeah, we're
No way.
Yeah, we're sending 30 cases to the Broad Street location and 30 cases to
That's
the Midlothian.
awesome. Which you can only buy it in 30-case increments, so get there early.
That's correct.
Because it's Costco.
I need 30 cases and 5,000 pencils. That's it.
Well,
That's all I'm here for.
That's what I'm here for. And
But that's
5 gallons of mayonnaise.
And the gross of toilet paper.
Well, and I never thought that we'd get in Costco because Costco's bulk.
Yeah.
But Costco very early recognized that the craft beer market is there. And so they're actually selling them for 4-packs. I mean,
I buy a lot
No
of.
way.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
I buy a lot of bottles that size at Costco. Just
Right,
don't
so
want just singles.
Right. So they've got like some Hardywood, some Licking Hold there, and then they finally were like, Headspace was killing it, and I made contact with one of the Costco buyers, and he was like, "Yeah, we'll go with
Nice.
it."
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah. So it's been super exciting for us to get into Costco.
And you can buy it here, right? So people
yeah,
can come
you
here and buy
yeah,
it too.
you
So
can buy
yeah,
it here.
don't just swing by Costco. Come out to Kindred Spirit and try it
Definitely.
at the source.
Oh, if you haven't had a chance to come to Kindred Spirit, it's always a good time. And it's funny because you guys mentioned that you were looking for kind of a family atmosphere. Yeah. It really is kind of like when you come in here, it's one of the few places where I've ended up mingling with everybody on all sides of the tables and like talking to people. People outside on the patio have had their dogs, and I've ended up just hanging out with their dogs. I brought my kids in here and had some crazy games of Jenga. Like crazy games of Jenga.
Well, we've got a new life-size Connect 4.
Oh,
So give that a try.
Nice.
I love it. Yeah, so this is, like I said, this is my go-to in the area. I like to come here and just kind of hang out because they do have the music more often than not. There's always a good food truck outside, and the beer is spot on.
I was gonna say I'm having the Paradise Lager.
Yeah.
Oh, now that right there.
This is a damn fine beer.
So the
right
Paradise Lager is, to the hardcore IPA head, they're going to be like, there's not enough hops in there.
Yeah.
But to someone who just likes an IPA,
here. Yeah.
it's probably the most refreshing damn beer around.
Well, it's 100% Citra hops.
Which
Yeah.
I
So-
love, so I
You're
go with that.
Yeah.
But I
It's very
love the
refreshing.
Paradise Lager.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the. In fact, you saw me when I went up there. I was like,
You wanted it.
I did. I ordered the Paradise, but the keg had kicked, and I was like, well, I'm an
Yeah.
impatient man. I'll take whatever that is. And I
So
tried.
it's all your fault that we lost Lee, our head brewer.
Is that what
Yeah,
happened?
because I had him right there cornered. I'm like, we're going on the podcast.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then they're like, Paradise kicked. Go change it, Lee.
He's like tapping out. I'm
Yeah.
out.
Then he was back there spraying down the tanks. And
So quite literally, that adds up.
Yeah.
That was me.
So how many beers do you have on tap right now? How many you
we
got?
try to keep at least 15 on tap.
Nice.
Wow.
So I was in the back room once, invited, and
The door was
By
open.
who?
The door's just open.
it doesn't matter. I was. Regardless, I'm back there, right? And I'm hanging out near the by the vat, and all of them had like it said Biggie Smalls, it said Tupac, it said Dr. Dre. There were all of these old school, what I would consider old school '90s rap artists across.
You
all
would
of
consider
the
them
vats.
old school because you're so young and you don't understand any of those guys because you're 29.
I grew up on Drake.
Yeah.
He's such a hipster.
Yeah, he's hitting now.
Yeah.
But what is that about? Why are there?
So they named all the tanks, and if you look at some of the beers that we've come out with, Paid in Full,
Yep.
they're very, very big fans of.
Oh, you see, now it's all coming together.
Yeah, full
Okay.
circle here. Come on.
I love it. No, now it is starting to come together.
Yeah.
But that was something that I came away with, and I wasn't back there unknowingly running around with like
Oh,
random
you were
stuff.
doing something you
No,
shouldn't
no.
have been.
I actually
Yeah, so
hosted.
There's Paid in Full.
Thank you so much. I
Is
actually
this Lee?
I hosted.
That is Ken that Jason was talking about.
Oh,
He's
thank
been,
you.
Ken has given us the new release.
but he
beer.
didn't bring me one.
Oh.
He only has two hands.
that is actually fair.
Sorry.
He's
It
not a
was-
professional server, obviously.
The old brewer had 3 hands, and he was fantastic.
Real quick, just before we get too far down to the next beer, the Headspace. I'm not a big IPA guy, but I definitely.
What do you think of that?
I definitely like this. I mean, it's
Yeah.
again the punch that you would usually get with a true.
Yeah, isn't
IPA,
that interesting?
It's not there. I like taking my time and drinking this because.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, these are. Man, this service around here is awesome.
Well, it's Kindred Spirits. It's the
Yeah.
finest brewery in town.
This is great. So no, just we haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna give it straight up. Just 4 because I don't even. I like the marketing with.
No, that's my score.
The
with it as well.
headspace.
Yes.
Oh yeah, That's
so in order to
definitely-
win a deli, just so you know, because you're like 4 out of 10, that's offensive. That's not where it goes. It's a 1 to 5, and nothing gets a 5.
nothing's ever gotten a 5.
But if it can get 4s consistently, that's a deli winner. And so I know I gave it a 4.
Yeah.
Stu's giving it
See,
a 4.
I'm giving it a 3 for my personal choice of beer flavors.
But you're not an IPA guy.
I'm
you're
not
the
an
closest
IPA guy,
thing to
but
Ely
this
we've
is-
got.
I get an extra point for the can.
I'm getting you
All right.
the labeling and the fact that it's 7.7 on the APV. That's always good.
Well, and that's the Paradise Lagers, like, it's a step down in flavor, and it's also a step down in ABV, which makes it my go-to.
Yeah, more
I love
drinkable.
the Paradise
You-
Lager.
You can pound them.
Yeah, but that's why I like the Paradise Lager, because I tend to drink 15.
Yeah,
That's my own
exactly.
demon. Don't hold that against the brewery.
Yeah,
that
that's
came out in his marriage counseling earlier.
Quite literally. Like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, I'm a light beer guy, and that Paradise Lager is like perfect for just crushing with more flavor than
And
a
what
light beer.
What I love about the fact that Headspace was actually brought to us by a listener. Like, I didn't even bring that. One of our listeners named Matt came over and said, "You have to try this as a deli. I think it's a winner."
Yeah, and I think I gave it a 4 too.
Yeah, it was a 4.2, unheard of.
Yeah,
Loving it.
It may be. It's got to be one of 2 IPAs that has ever actually received a deli award. So kudos.
and we've done this
What was
over
the other
100
one?
times.
I can't recall, and I know that's it's fucked
Usually
up.
you recall.
I'll figure it out.
The deli that came from Susquehanna.
Yeah, but that was the Shady Spot. See,
Right.
I remember all this
Yeah.
random crap, but that was not an IPA.
Not an IPA.
No, it wasn't. Oh,
they're not.
other
Not
IP.
all the delis are IPAs because it's hard to find new IPAs all
and,
the time.
and it gets to a point where it's taxing to have failure after failure after failure. So what you do is you bring in 2 IPAs a month, and you bring in 2 other things. At least now you guys know mine.
Right. So, all right. So, what's the highest scoring deli then?
Headspace.
No, actually, the Headspace is up there, but the
For sure.
Shady Spot by Susquehanna Brewing that you brought up was actually up there, just about as high. Have you ever heard of Susquehanna Brewing? out
I
of
have, but I
Pennsylvania?
don't know the beer. What style
So
is the
Shady
beer?
Spot, it's a springtime beer that they release, and it's not a Hefeweizen, but it's certainly in the ballpark, which is also easier to win a deli because
which is also that's Deli's
Ely-
wheelhouse.
yeah, Ely spent a lot of time in Germany.
Germany.
So he's like a Warsteiner guy and things like that. So he loves it.
Yeah,
It's easy money. But as far as IPAs, I can't think of another one.
I can't either.
I know one time, I think Pliny the Elder beat out. We did a head-to-head between Pliny and Hetty Topper.
Yeah,
And I think Pliny won out on that particular one.
Really?
yeah.
So
One of the
Pliny-
mustache guys brought us in both those beers, which are extremely hard to get. So we were super geeked up to get those and try those, and we liked both of them.
We did, but that one, I think it would have to be Pliny. But it's a different beer
Yeah,
altogether.
They're 2 completely different beers.
Yeah, it's a completely different
Yeah.
beer. So, and I also wonder if it was part of the fact that we had 2 of the hardest to get beers in
Yeah.
America in the room.
Certainly.
Yeah,
that
certainly.
you start to get excited, you know.
Oh, we were
So-
kids on Christmas Day for sure.
it was.
So,
So,
what is this beer
yeah, I'm
that we
looking
have
at
in our
the
hands? 'Cause
Marion
this
Bright.
looks juicy as can be.
Okay, so this
Looks
is
like orange juice.
This is Marion Bright. This is our winter IPA. This is the first time we put this beer out. Copiously hopped with Amarillo and Azaka. But like I said a minute ago, a little
dry.
bit in the whirlpool, almost everything in the dry hop. So there's almost zero bitterness in this beer. It's all fruit flavor and aroma. Tons of pineapple, mango, tropical fruit.
Certainly smells hoppy, but that's the dry.
Right.
I haven't tasted it yet.
Yeah.
And it definitely, I mean, just from, it looks like orange juice.
Yeah.
Well, that's that hazy style, I
Yeah.
assume, right?
And so just to say it, we're canning this beer tomorrow, so it's in the carbing up process right now, so it's maybe a touch undercarbed at this point. Just
So
putting
this
that
will
out there.
literally, the day this episode comes out, will be the release day for this beer.
We're going to release it on Friday. So
Knowing me, there's a fighting chance this won't come out till Friday. So
He needs
that
it.
might add up perfectly.
He needs at least 48 hours to recover.
so
Man.
once
Oh,
again,
shit.
talking about what you're looking for at the end beer. I wanted super soft and creamy, bright fruit, aromatics, tons of fruit in the mouth, and
That's amazing, right?
I would drink that all day.
Yeah, that could be dangerous.
Don't bury the lead.
and what is that?
I don't agree
think
with
it's
this beer at all.
6.6.
6'2".
6'2"
yeah,
is what it
6'2".
says.
And you came up with the name, right, Heather?
I do get to take credit for that
Actually,
name.
she does get to take credit for that one.
My one and only.
So is this seasonal? This is only for
Yes.
For how long? Do you have a end date on it? Until it sells out?
Until it sells out. So we brewed about 45 barrels of it. We're going to send 100
It was
100 cases and about 30 quarter barrels of this out into the market on Friday. The rest of it will be available here, so it'll last.
Well, we'll take
probably
half of it now.
through early January.
Stu's buying it all now.
Screw Costco. Whatever it is, we'll double it.
That's wild.
That
is really good, and it is bright. It's about as bright as you can get in an IPA. What's interesting is the lack of IPA punch on the front end, and then it grows on the back end.
Yeah.
I think that comes down to the dry hopping.
Right.
Like,
So
that
that's the crazy turn that's happened in IPAs over the past 5 years, and it was starting maybe even before that. But
yeah,
you go back to 10 years ago, IPAs were marketing themselves on their bitterness. Breweries were saying, my beer's 105 IBUs, and the next brewery would say mine's 115. And you get to the point where you couldn't drink more than one beer because they were so bitter.
Yeah.
So what's happened is beers, IPAs especially, have become to be more softer and approachable to the point where you have breweries like the Vale that are touting the fact that their beer has 0 IBUs, which isn't actually feasible.
not
I was going to say, how is
possible.
that a thing?
It's not possible.
Yeah, that's a lie.
But it was actually only till recently did they realize that. So
That they're liars?
No, they knew that going in. You can't make a statement like that.
well,
and
no.
not know
So
you're lying.
it was only recently that, when I say recently, it could be within 5 to 10 years that you only extracted bitterness from the hops during the hot part of the brewing process. It's come to find out that when you add hops in the dry hop portion in the cold side of the process, you're still extracting some bitterness. So about the time when Vale came out with this 0 IBU IPA, people still weren't sure. But yeah, it's not a feasible thing, even though they're still saying it is.
Do you know what the IBU is on this?
If I had to guess, so that's also the problem. Like, I'm sure there's. Well, no, there's no way to.
I was going to say, is that up to
No,
interpretation?
it's a
How
loaded
does that
question
work?
because
It's a very loaded question.
because I do taste bitterness. Like
Well-
I taste it. I know there's IBUs there.
Right.
I
So
just don't know
there's a
what-
couple of things. The beer is still a touch green, so you're getting a little bit more acidity and a little bit more bitterness from the hops than you'll get like 2 weeks from now.
Will that happen in the bottle?
It will all drop. It will soften up every day over the next for the rest of its life, actually.
Oh, wow.
But in my mind, this beer is probably going to hit its peak in 2 to 3 weeks. It's just green. It's young. It's fresh.
It's
tell
funny you
you-
say that.
The visual is a mind fuck.
It really is. Oh, did you see? So
definitely.
I just invited over one of the biggest hopheads in the house, and that's why I'd called Mike Jackson over.
Who's big
Because
with M4K?
That dude he's the one who always sources the Pliny, sources the Heady. I mean, that's what he does. He's hardcore in like the beer trading world. Like, he's an old Grateful Dead tape trading kind of beer dude. You know what I mean?
I know them all.
Yes. Well, your beard told me you'd understand a Grateful Dead reference. But your stature means that you're a beer guy too. So like, I get it. I understand.
A little bit of
You're
both.
in there. Yeah. So I knew he would appreciate that beer, so I wanted to bring him over and at least let him give that a taste. Because the hops in there is amazing, but there is a hint of greenness. I know what you're saying, where in the back of your mouth when it's over, there's that it's a tightness. I don't know how else to describe it. But
Tightness is actually a great way to say it.
yeah, because there's a tightness when things are green, be it a wine, be it a beer, be it whatever. Except for my mother-in-law brought some horrible young wine to Thanksgiving. That
I was
apparently
the
First
for your-
problem. Why'd you
But,
invite your mother-in-law?
talked to my wife. See, the counselor thought it was a good idea. No,
This
this church counselor.
This wine was, I went over to his house for
It
Thanksgiving
literally
later.
tasted like grape juice.
They'd all had their wine tasting that they do this little family
So
get together.
Was it Beaujolais Nouveau?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And the Nouveau implies very green, right?
It's the first harvest of the year.
And then they
it's
literally
actually-
put it
it's-
right out.
It's a traditional.
Thank you.
It's actually, for me, it's a traditional Thanksgiving wine. I've had it for Thanksgiving every year for probably.
But see,
16,
that is why
17 years.
that is exactly why I brought
But it's
it up.
like
because
drinking
it's young.
Welch's.
See, I'm not.
Oh
a big,
my God! It tastes literally like.
I'm
grape
not a big
juice.
wine guy.
I'm not a wine guy,
But
so I would love that.
I show up and everybody's had the wine, and they're like, "Hey, Stuart, here, have this."
The Beaujolais
Okay. I'm
Nouveau.
like, oh my god.
But there is a tightness there too, and that's why I bring it up, because anything that's young, and I don't know how else to describe it as a tightness in my.
Don't say anything that's young is tight. That's just you're crossing. You're crossing lines.
I'm crossing lines, but it's also implied, so I feel like there's
But
two sides of the coin.
there's other things that you can equate it to in terms of. I always go to like unripe fruit. So think of like especially like an unripe strawberry.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
Where
bite
you get
it,
that green bitterness, you get a little bit of the sweetness, but
Yeah.
you get that green flavor and you get that little bit of a bite.
So you
know.
think that bite is going to lessen?
It's going to go
over
away.
time.
It's going to be gone in a week.
Because what I'm tasting right now is an incredible juiciness,
The juiciness will stay.
and there's like it's. I sound weird, but it's fruit forward.
Yeah.
Very
in a
much
weird
so.
way. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about this. This is a true, what I would consider a New England style IPA.
100%.
Very
Gotcha.
juicy, fruit forward, exciting drink, man.
Without
This
the funk
is-
on the back
And
end.
y'all are the first to taste it.
Thank
Which
you.
I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
So, quick question though, just for me because I don't know the whole process. From inception of the brew side to marketing and getting it out there, how long ago did you guys start on this actual Bright and Merry, or Merry and Bright?
Mary
Mary
and Bright.
Bright.
Mary
So we started.
Bright Mary.
We brewed a pilot batch of this beer probably early October.
Okay.
We had the idea. We had the we've used a sort of a variation of the base beer and a couple other things. We tweaked a few things, but it was sort of looking at using different hops. We'd never used Azacca and Amarillo together before, but we thought they would complement themselves well. So we brewed just a little 10-gallon batch on our pilot system to make sure that we liked the flavors, and we did.
So fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively, like here we are, December 1, basically, or the 1st of December, and you're getting it out there.
But if you
And-
think about that shows you how 1 week can like change a beer, because you're talking about a 6-week production cycle from beginning to end, give or
Right.
take.
So this beer itself, what we're drinking right now, was brewed 16 days ago.
Wow.
Damn.
Whoa, that's really quick.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a couple of days quicker than we would normally like to do it, but we're canning it tomorrow. It's going to get picked up by the distributor on Friday, so it won't really start hitting the market till the middle of the next week. So it'll
be
by the
perfect.
by
That's
the
the
time it
prime
gets
spot.
to most people, it'll be where we want it.
And
Well,
so,
it's
and,
delicious.
It's fantastic.
and
It's
how long ago
delicious
did
now.
you present it to the distributors?
We sold it 4 or 5 weeks ago out.
Yeah.
It was all pre-sold.
Wow. Without even like they don't even need samples. They just buy upon.
It's
Well,
reputation.
we're
There
good.
you go.
Well, that's what
So
I'm saying.
it's
Like,
reputation. The same reason people download every episode, despite like the turd we put out last
oh
week.
yeah, that's true. We did suck last week.
I mean, we go to.
Oh, wait. We can't. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, no,
Go ahead.
It's
You go ahead.
inside joke. Troy had the
Yeah, that
flu,
was- it's-
Yeah,
and Troy's
that was
flu
bad.
game. Well, it wasn't the flu; it was just sickness. But Troy did not Michael Jordan it. That's all.
I hardly showed up. It's on me.
Michael Jordan didn't have the flu anyway.
But is that the case,
Oh,
Heather?
he was
like most,
hungover.
is
Incredibly.
Most of
hard.
the
Yeah,
distrib-
he was.
We're going to our
You feel me.
best clients, and we're only doing a limited release of it, and looking for them to pick it up. If they don't pick it up, we'll go to the next one.
That's
But,
awesome.
We did a. We
How
got
long do
a
we
lot
think
of,
it'll be at the brewery? Like, when will it be? Based
It'll
on
be here
based
Friday,
on your run.
right?
No, but I mean, like, from the time
my
it
guess
starts
is,
to when it
is-
sells
is
out,
a month-ish.
month?
a
yeah.
month.
It's hard
Yeah,
to predict.
Yeah, give or take.
So you can get
Nice.
this through the new year, hopefully, like
Yeah,
through the
probably.
holiday season.
Yeah, we should have cans in draft for probably a month. would
We
be
hope.
my guess. That's sort of the way we try and plan it out. Obviously, we don't necessarily know how things are going to go, but that's pretty much the plan.
4.
See,
That's awesome.
That's
So-
another listener just came over, took a sip of it, and gave it a 4.
Gave it a 4. He knows all about the
I
deli
love
score.
it.
That's good. You guys are hitting
I
it out of
love
the
it.
park.
No, because that is.
I'm
I mean,
going
I
to go
feel like
above.
I'm blowing smoke, but you can't go. Go ahead. I don't mean to. What do you got? What do you got?
I was going to go above a 4.
Go. What do you
Oh,
got?
you like
I'll
this
give it a
more
4
than
and
the
a half.
headspace.
I'll
wow.
give it a 4.5.
You see, just to do averages, then I'll give it a 3.5. No, I'm just kidding.
So-
no, honestly, this beer is so bright. I love a New England style IPA. Like I like that juiciness. Now I'm the anomaly amongst our crew that I like a juicy IPA, and for that reason alone, you've nailed that New England style IPA.
Thank you.
It's definitely a 4, but what I don't quite understand is what makes it a holiday beer versus just a juicy IPA. What's the?
Well, it's not a holiday beer.
It's just released
a winter,
at that
It's
time.
a winter IPA.
But why is it? What makes winter?
It's December.
Fair enough.
Ah,
But he got
Brendan's
you.
still
He got
learning.
you.
I mean, another thing, just coming from the marketing perspective, when I was out selling it to our customers, there's so many stouts and
Yeah.
everything,
Yep.
and they're like, "Don't give me another stout. Don't give me." And now when I
Yeah.
said it's a hazy IPA, they're like, "Damn, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that-
and
You know,
actually, so I hope this
It's
is.
got a cool name."
I
Yeah.
don't want
Yeah.
the tightness to leave entirely. I know we were talking about the green, but the tight is what's also bright. That doesn't just rhyme; it's a fact.
yeah.
It needs to hold on to it, some of that too. So I want it to soften, but so much. You know what I
Right,
mean?
so-
I
so-
want it to have that kind of.
So in tasting through the other similar beers like this that we've made over the years, like
yeah,
Lucid or Frequency Modulation, Maui Gold, beers like that, there's that sweet spot that comes in from about a month from when it's brewed,
yeah.
that goes to about 8-10 weeks,
Yeah.
and that's that sweet spot.
And that's why they have born on dates.
Exactly.
That's right.
And I'm not saying that the beer sucks after 8 or 10 weeks. It's just going to be different.
It's going to be
Yeah.
a lot softer.
It's
And
gonna-
some of
it's
what
just gonna
makes this
continue to
pleasurable
soft.
is that it has a little kick.
Right. So
It's good.
and some of those fruit flavors are going to start to soften up even more. And I'm not one of those that says, you have to drink your IPAs when they're, under 45 days old.
Yeah.
But you have to understand as a consumer that the beers are going to constantly evolve, and that
Yeah.
if you drink an IPA at your own peril, that's 90 days or 180 days past production, you can't.
That's on you.
Exactly.
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 Well, that's why
But
it's a
you-
best by date. It's not like you will die after this
But
date.
there's certain
but
beers.
it will change after that
There's
date.
certain beers, like I have actually taken the Hardywood Gingerbread Stout and saved them for multiple years.
Oh, yeah.
because a
that's
beer
bad.
that's that complicated, right? I actually don't mind if it softens up and becomes less.
Didn't we do one of those a couple
We-
of years
we
ago?
did a
that was
deli-
awful.
Last year, and we had 4 years of gingerbread stouts. And I think 1 year back one, I think that's the sweet spot for that beer because it is
I
so.
agree 100%.
Yeah, that's what.
The beer is so bizarre, just because. What do you need?
What?
I'm looking for the label,
You
sorry.
just distracted everybody.
Sorry, I'm looking for the label.
You just look confused. Like
I was
because,
confused.
because there's so many different flavor components that mature at different ages.
yeah,
Right,
and that's
so-
exactly right. And it's softened to the point that I could appreciate all of them, as
Right.
opposed to one being the kick in the mouth.
Right, but so you get to some at
But
some
it's
point,
degraded
the,
2 or
right,
3 years.
right. So then the ginger starts to fall off, but maybe the the vanilla or the nutmeg starts to
Exactly.
pop. It's so weird. I agree. The best ones that I've had
Are a year old.
are a year old,
Yeah.
and I have some of the older ones. And as a matter of fact, I tried tonight the Mega Apple Brandy GBS that they just put out.
Wow. Sounds like a lot going on.
Yeah, but it's actually
So we tried something from Asheville Brewing Company called the Ninja Bread Man. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Oh, the look on
Oh.
your face says
Oh.
extremely familiar with it.
I've had quite a few beers from Asheville Brewing Company.
Well, I didn't say their beers were good. I said the Ninja Bread Man.
I haven't had the Ninja Bread Man from them.
So the Ninja Bread Man is a 6% low version of a gingerbread stout. And I found it but it's a porter.
It's a
for
porter.
starters.
Yeah, we just did this.
But I found it to be really good because it was muted, like across the board. which was almost like letting a gingerbread stout sit for a year.
So
He doesn't agree with anything I'm saying, but he's a gentleman.
No, not
and
at
he's
all.
not going
I
to-
haven't had the beer. I've
You're
been
not a
to,
fan of Asheville.
I've been to Asheville
Company.
Brewing Company on 3 separate occasions, and haven't finished the beer there yet.
Are you you? That is
Wow.
brutal.
That's saying something.
And I'm
because-
trying to be polite.
That fucking sucks.
because
apparently.
I hate lots of beers and finish them.
yeah.
Yeah, but you're an alcoholic.
Well,
He's a
there's that.
connoisseur.
Yeah.
There's a
So-
big difference between alcoholism and connoisseurism.
True.
One
On-
appreciates it, one falls over.
One needs it.
Along that vein, for your beers that you guys are out here right now, do you have one particular that you're either most proud of or that you really enjoy drinking? Same question for you, Heather.
So it always goes back to Headspace, no matter what we have going on. To me,
Well, it's a deli winner, which means the world to a couple thousand
to
people.
me,
They'll
it's,
put that up on the board by
it's-
next week.
it's always the most drinkable. It's always the most comfortable beer that we have for me. Right now, we have a bunch of great stuff on tap, and I'm not trying to toot our own horn, but what's actually usually always my favorite beer that we produce is the one that we're going to get ready to taste next, and that's our Bourbon Barrel Goodness Imperial Stout, which I think.
I'm a stout guy.
Which
Oh,
I,
we're tasting. Wow, look at this.
Dude, y'all
this
are.
is-
This is on.
This
oh,
is fantastic.
well,
We've only been
So-
treated with this level of respect once before.
Yeah, this is.
so
Thank you very much, guys. Wow.
So this one, if it wasn't 11%, I would drink it all the time.
Which is always the catch.
Right.
I tend to, when I shop for beers, I start with ABVs, and then I look at descriptions because, well, like I said earlier, I like to drink 15 beers. And so if I get reduced to 5, well, that's a problem. for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But I'm excited
So-
to try this. So what is
So-
this that we have
Right.
in front
Your
of us?
favorite? Well, real quick, let's let before we
So,
jump.
Well, I had a couple other things to say before
Oh,
we
oh,
get
sorry.
into this,
Yeah.
and we let Heather go. So we have a ton of really cool beers on tap right now. We have F-Bomb, which is a 6.2% IPA, 100% Falconer's Flight. A little bit lighter and drier style of IPA than like Headspace and certainly than Marion Bright. We just did our first ever actual amber ale that we released last week. We did that James River Family Dentistry.
This is how they sedate people.
Exactly. Hold still.
They
This
bring
won't
your
hurt a
child
bit.
in and they give them a beer bong.
They bid on a raffle for the MDA last year, and they bid
Oh, no way.
$3,500 to come in and brew a beer with us.
Nice.
we had a-
Respect.
And then we had
James River Dentistry.
James
Good for
River
them.
Family Dentistry.
Yeah.
So,
Good for them.
we had a big release party in here for them last week, and she's like, I want to do an amber ale. So they came in, helped out on the brew day, designed a label for everything, and the beer's really, really good. Just light, a little malty, and just poundable. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Heather's like, I gotta go try that too now.
What's the name of that one? The amber.
That's amber-eyed Marley. So Marley is a
Oh,
little.
I tried that
Amber-
tonight.
Yeah.
That's
Amber-eyed
actually
Marley?
because I saw that and I saw that I liked the tasting notes. It was low ABV, and big Bob Marley fan. In fact, last night the Elf magically showed up on a Bob Marley album. What are the odds?
Elf on the Shelf.
Yeah, it's a long Christmas story. But I tried it. It was fantastic. It was really good because I wasn't looking for something hoppy. I wanted something a little more malty, and it was
Yeah.
a great
So
beer.
so Marley is a French bulldog that's sort of their office mascot.
Ah.
So that's how they came up with the
Interesting.
name.
I don't have his album.
No.
I just don't. So, not to sidetrack things, but so you guys get involved with a handful of philanthropic efforts. That's exciting to see because tonight, obviously, you are surrounded all these mustaches. We're raising money for children's charities all over the Richmond area. In fact, we are in the final week. That's why our mustaches
Final
look
days.
so
Yeah.
fantastic right now. And we raise money for a handful of children's charities here in the area, and that's what we do. And so I thank you for hosting us tonight, but it's not every brewery that wants to get involved with something like this. So thank you for doing that. And it's obvious that if you're putting Brew Your Beer, come up with the label, into auctions that are charity related, there is a philanthropic thread throughout the organization. Is that true, or am I just happy to pick up on it?
No, that's true. We are a family friendly brewery, and we want to give back to the community. And so we do participate in a lot of charity events.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
we try and focus on a lot of local stuff. We do a lot of stuff with Goochland-based charities.
I love your
Since-
shirt.
since
I
we're
noticed that.
I did too.
Since-
Keep it local, keep it gooch.
So, since we're in Goochland County, we do a lot of stuff with Goochland Pet Lovers and
Goochland Cares.
and stuff
So
like
we
that.
helped Goochland Cares raise over 1,000 turkeys for Thanksgiving.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Nice.
So
So you're feeding families that need
And
could use
so
a little assistance.
we would
during
love for y'all to
Thanksgiving.
come back out on December 19th. We have comedy night, and we're giving back to families
That's
first.
a Wednesday, right?
That is a Thursday.
It's a
Thursday.
Thursday. We'll have a food truck. We'll have the same food truck as we have
Yeah,
tonight.
Thursday.
Right on Time Mobile Diner. And
Okay.
Winston Hodges will be back out as our headliner. He's fantastic. He travels from New York to D.C. Great guy.
Oh, wow.
This is great.
And we're giving in that, and then that night we'll give back to families first.
So the money, some of the money that's raised at some level ends up going back to the community.
Correct.
I'm so glad that you guys see. This is why it's my favorite brewery. See, I knew
You've always said it. You've
Well,
always said it.
I tend to gravitate towards
You need a job.
philanthropic people. Give it time. If there's one thing I've learned is that you always need a job in the waiting in the wings, right? Like I've learned this over time. But I'm really excited to hear that because I think a lot of people get caught up in kind of their own minutia, like the day-to-day, like I got to deal with this, I got to deal with this. They don't
I know I
necessarily
do.
think to give back. But here you are with the ridiculous mustache.
Well, and that's
giving
why I
money
do
to the
it,
children.
to prove your point. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm really glad to hear that you are taking the time to seek out some of these organizations.
We're in business, and the reason of being in business is to make money. But
yes.
you have to take care of your community for them to be able to take care of you.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
however we can help anybody that's local to us or even, on a broader scale. I mean, we've done stuff, obviously, like I said, with the MDA and places like that. So, yeah, it's important. Otherwise, what's the point of just making money?
Well, and ultimately, you find out.
Cars.
Well, yeah, Miatas.
Yeah, I already made all the money I needed. Now I'm giving back to charity.
Well, and you find out when you do these things,
$1,800.
when you give to other people, you're getting back. Like it just feels good, you
Right.
know, and that's a great thing.
A lot of times people don't have the venue or the means
Yeah, you're in a
to
unique
do it.
position.
And they're like, look, we need a place to host this, we need that. And I'm able, and Jason's able to help them have a place to host their event. And they don't know what food trucks that's going to help them. Like Right on Time Mobile Diner, we did a event for child cancer. And he turned around and donated
Nice.
a huge donation to her. I mean, brought
It's-
both of them to tears. It was shocking.
I love to hear that because
So-
that's something M4K seeks out organizations that actually want to help back, right? And I think that's probably exactly why we're here tonight. They probably, I don't know the backstory of how this came to be, but my guess is they talked to you, said, look, there's an opportunity to make money and do good. And that appealed to you.
Yeah, they give to, let's see, we got Scan, Ask, the children, Feed More, Richmond Children's Hospital, the Cameron Gay Gallagher Foundation, and the Salvation Army. And I think there's one more.
Like,
but
there's like 7 or 8 major ones, and then they break out for minor ones. Last year we raised $350,000. This year we're hoping to
308.
go.
This year we're hoping to get to 350.
308.
I was like, sweet Jesus.
This year we're hoping to get to actually 4 is
That's a
what
goal.
is our goal, $400,000.
And one of the other things, too, that we all know, but maybe you didn't know, is 100% of the donations actually go to the charity. There's no funds to, like, the guys that run the show. They don't take anything. It's all.
Which is why they're all wearing these tattered, miserable shirts.
Yeah, we can't.
But drinking good beer.
Yes.
Yes. Well, then thank you for that.
That is awesome. So what is your favorite beer, real quick?
I have to go with Headspace.
The Headspace again?
But Lucid is a close runner.
Is nobody going to bring up the strawberry milkshake beer?
Yeah, that was good.
Because there is
I've
a
had
certain
that.
amount of lactose that's amazing. And what about the orange dreamsicle? I mean,
Yeah,
like
that-
this is you guys. You see, you make so many good beers that you forget about some of the ones that bring us in here. That orange dreamsicle is phenomenal. The strawberry milkshake is just the right amount of lactose for a lactose intolerant person to spend the next day in the bathroom, and someone who can handle lactose to have the best night of their life.
There you go.
It's phenomenal. It's probably the worst review of that beer
Yuck.
anyone's ever given.
But that pretty much sums it up.
But so good. So I'm just saying, let's not lose sight of some of the more the outlier beers that you do that can't fall into a category that are phenomenal. Just saying.
Thank you very much.
Just saying.
So I'm staring
We
at
tried.
this. I'm staring at this full beer here. So, what are we diving into here again?
All right, so this is the goodness.
The
This is-
goodness.
This is bourbon barrel aged imperial stout, 11%.
This is going to be strong.
Woo!
You
spent,
had me at bourbon barrel.
spent about 4 months in A. Smith Bowman, freshly dumped.
Is there
A. Smith
something we
Bowman
should
bourbon
know?
barrels.
The fact that Heather's not having one.
Hold on, this is another.
She weighs half as much as everyone here.
I will have a sip at Jason.
And she might
Why
die.
is it that Bowman bourbon barrels end up in so many breweries? Because
It's the closest good bourbon producer, like mass bourbon producer
Yeah.
that there is.
Because
So
it
we
shows
can-
up everywhere.
Right.
Like I feel like Bowman bourbon barrels.
So
end
we
up-
can go with a pickup truck and pick up 6 bourbon barrels, as
That's what
opposed
it
to
is.
if I'm going to buy Heaven Hill or Buffalo Trace or whatever,
Yeah.
I got to pay to get it on a truck and get it from here. And quite frankly, they're selling them cheaper.
And Bowman's good.
I'm a big Buffalo Trace guy, though.
No,
I love that
Buffalo Trace. I mean, I would love to get their barrels, but they're twice as expensive.
So
as
it's
Bowman.
economics, and it doesn't really add to the end game.
Not necessarily. Not unless you're Hardywood and you're looking to do 12 different variants of the same beer, and you
Yeah,
want to do.
you see, now
you
we're
want to do
splitting
heaven.
hairs.
Right. So now
We're
you do.
splitting hairs, though. Let's be
But
honest.
no, you want to do Heaven Hill, you want to do Weller, you want to do Rebel Yell, you want to do Four Roses, you want to
I
do.
know that sounds good on
Blanton's.
paper, but I really don't think I'm going to tell the difference between.
Yo,
the-
that's really
99% of the people can't
Yeah.
tell the difference.
Yeah.
It's marketing, and it's
It's
great.
marketing,
and
yeah.
God bless them because they're able to sell it all.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That's what I've never understood about their gingerbread stout, where they do. I'm like, the gingerbread stout is good. Why do 47 different versions of it? But I guess they sell 47 versions of it.
There's enough different. So my 2 cents on that. There's enough different things that you can do with different variations and different barrels and that sort of thing that you can get a lot of different variants because, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how many 100-point Beer Advocate beers have there been?
That's a
Yeah.
good question. How
Really?
many
No.
have there been?
Not many.
1, 2,
Five maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And gingerbread stout's the only one in Virginia?
The only one that's shown, and that changes so much from year to year
Sure.
that.
But
So-
they got it one time so they can hang their hat
But
on
and
it,
they
right?
and they
Right,
do. They
right.
put that
Well,
on the
but,
label.
I mean,
every time.
that's why they are
This
who
is
they
a
are.
wild beer right here. No, this really is. This really is. Are you a fan of the Dark Hollow from Blue Mountain?
That's great beer.
That's the closest thing I can liken this to as
Yes.
far as the beers that I like. You know what I mean? Like, I love this beer already.
and I love that they're putting out Dark Hollow year round now.
You're damn right. I used to literally buy that. I would drive up there and buy it and store it in my house. As you can see, the priest wasn't wrong. I'm a bit of a drunk. And, I do go out
Are
of
you
my
still
way.
married?
Yes,
happily,
he is.
Happily, yeah, absolutely.
On paper. They live together.
Sorry, that one hit me a little bit. That's a good joke, Troy. That was fun.
Hey, I'm here with you, brother.
That was fun. No, this beer reminds me of a Dark Hollow, but with a more subtle mellowness that I actually appreciate.
So last year we did this beer in Bowman barrels again. We also did a couple barrels in rum barrels that we really liked. But rum barrels are pieces of shit.
Yeah,
How so?
Caribbean.
Well, because they get used for 20 or 25 years
Okay.
before they decide to sell them. So you can get them cheap,
Yeah.
but
They
they
don't hold
leak.
up.
They're awful. They're dirty. They're nasty. So we were hoping to find some again this year that were in decent shape and were reasonably priced, and we couldn't.
So you lose too much product during the.
Yeah, and so
The
what-
angel share's bigger than the yield.
Yeah.
So, but what happens is when you lose a lot of product, the oxygen fills the void,
Yeah.
And the enemy of anything that's got alcohol in it is
Yeah.
oxygen.
Yeah.
So you run the risk of oxidizing your product, and we just didn't feel like running that risk this year. So we're hoping next year that we can do, a second variant of it. But I love everything about this beer.
This beer's about perfect.
Yeah.
It's so mellow, so smooth. You get that little caramel from the bourbon, and the stout lends itself to that.
Yeah,
but
this
it's
beer-
not overly boozy.
Right.
Like it's
So-
perfect.
What's the name on this again? And
This is the goodness.
the goodness, and you're releasing it.
It's already been released.
It's been released.
already out.
We
It's
sent
on-
it out to the market last week. Sold a bunch of bottles over the weekend. I think we only have about 20 or 30 bottles of it left to sell.
It lands somewhere
Nice.
in between chocolate and caramel, and I like that. I like
It's
that.
delicious.
It's the roll though of beers.
The ro-
So I
It's
hate
delicious, but I
hate to-
can taste the beer. I mean, the alcohol.
Oh
And
yeah,
if
no,
you've
because you
got-
need to.
yeah,
If you're
you-
going to be a bourbon barreled stout, you better have some bourbon.
So you gotta
But so
check yourself.
what I
on
like
these.
is the heat itself is coming from the barrels. So
Yes.
we had about 2 kegs of this that we couldn't fit in the bourbon barrels that we tapped 3 months ago, and wasn't hot, wasn't boozy at all.
Oh wow.
So the flavor that you're getting, a lot of the flavor that you're getting is coming from the barrels. So you're getting a little of that charred wood, vanilla, a
Yeah.
little
Oh,
bit of
for sure.
spice,
Fantastic.
Yep.
a little bit of oak, and a little bit of that sort of bourbony heat.
Yep.
But to me, it's not overpowering.
What's
I
that?
said you're making me want to drink it now.
Here, have a sip.
Take it.
You really should,
Here's-
because now that you're hearing all the tasting notes, it should be more enjoyable. At least that's what we're hoping to. It's fantastic. Like that is a great beer. I don't mean to change subjects, but I know that we're way into the episode. We should be closing down at any moment. But I desperately have a topic I do want to talk to you two about more than any other, so I want to get to it. Ballast Point has
Kings and Convicts.
finally, no one else knows the name. In fact, no one in Chicago knows the name, but we'll get there. So Ballast
Because
Point,
they only make 600 barrels worth of beer.
they're literally a turd
There's
merchant
6
of the beer.
employees.
You're way ahead of me.
Turd
All right.
Sorry.
So Ballast Point years ago kind of was at the tip of the iceberg of the craft breweries selling out, if you will, air quotes. They sold out to the big conglomerate, right? And
ICPH has never thought any small market beer that sells out is selling out. We're pro.
so we
getting
actually,
your-
we fall on the other side of this. Now, I brought up Asheville earlier. I was in Wicked Weed not long ago, and everyone gets upset.
It depends on who you're selling out to.
Well, so that's
Well,
funny
yes.
because it was Constellation that they
Constellation
sold
brands,
out.
yes.
So Constellation, people didn't get as upset as when they sold other people sell out to Ambev. Slightly different variation.
Very
there.
different.
One's Anheuser-Busch. One is just a large beer conglomerate that's doing their own thing. But Ballast Point did start kind of a revolution of craft breweries selling out to these larger conglomerates. And people were upset. And it sold for, with a B, $1 billion.
Close to.
Yeah, we're going to call it $1 billion. But I know what
Sure.
you're saying.
Right.
Exactly. This is the same story as the Veil story. We tell the stories how we want to tell them. So
Well, yeah, because we have the microphones.
that's exactly right.
So we are
So
correct.
the reality is that they sold out, right, to the large conglomerate, and people revolted. People were upset. People get very upset.
Were they really? For Ballast Point?
Not so much for Ballast Point, but in the ones that have sold after, let it be the Devil's Backbones,
Or
let
Wicked
it
Weed
be
or
the Wicked
10 Barrel.
Weeds.
Right.
Yeah, whatever they
people-
were, the Goose Islands of the world. When these people sold out, as you would say, people got very upset. The reality of the situation is, in our belief, that selling out to a large conglomerate allows you to be more consistent. It certainly allows for better tolerances in your equipment, better distribution. There's a lot of advantages to selling out. Now, I don't know that you believe this. I'm just spouting my beliefs. I don't think it actually makes for a lesser beer if you're hands off. If you're hands off, you allow the beer to do their thing. But Ballast Point sold out. They started this domino falling, and all these other breweries fell. Well, here in the last week, Ballast Point was purchased by another brewery from Constellation Brands. It was a shithole brewery in Chicago called I can't remember the name of
Kings
it.
and Convicts.
Kings and
Kings
Convicts.
and Convicts. So Kings and Convicts
And for
doesn't even have
Brendan
a
to
name.
say something negative about Chicago is
I'm from Chicago. I love Chicago,
Yeah,
but Kings and Convicts isn't even a brand in Chicago.
And the CEO,
So for them to
the
be able to
CEO's
buy it-
the CEO's first name is Brendan for Kings and
It's
Convicts.
Brandon. It's a poorly.
Brendan.
hold on.
Right.
There's a difference between
Well,
Brendan
never mind.
and
This
Brandon.
dude's a genius.
So, can I chime in?
Yeah, I would love for you
On-
to, because I
on-
find this fascinating.
So, there's been a lot of acquisitions over the last, it's got to be 10 years.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, it starts with AB buying Goose Island.
that was the first
Yeah.
domino to
That
fall.
was the
truly.
first big one. I mean, there had been some other ones that had already happened, but none of them really mattered on sort of a
Which was a Chicago
on a-
brewery
on
so
a
it's
national scale.
Full circle. This weird
So
sequence of events.
So, AB fucked Goose Island, right?
How so? I don't mean to get
All right,
into.
no.
but how
So they took production of everything except for the Bourbon County stuff, and it's all being produced at their Baldwinsville, New York facility.
Okay.
Right? So
See,
what
I didn't know that. I thought
I didn't either.
I thought they bought them and let them still do their thing.
No.
Well, some do,
Every,
some don't.
Every good brewer left the Chicago Goose Island Brewery. So the only thing that's still getting brewed there is
312.
is the Bourbon County. No,
Oh, 312's not even brewed there.
No,
so
that's brewed in New York.
become commercial
It's
issue.
their sour program and their Bourbon County
Fantastic
program
beer.
is brewed in Chicago. Everything else is brewed at some Bud production facility. So everybody's concern was, because what Bud did was they took Goose Island IPA and turned it into the Bud Light of IPAs. They mass produced it. They dropped the price down to the point where retailers couldn't say no. They were selling it for the same price
Oh, as a craft beer, but
as
getting
a craft
it
beer as the
as
same
Coors
price as
Light.
Bud Light.
Interesting.
So,
But did they change the product?
Of course they did.
Okay. 'Cause
Have you
that's
had
what
Goose
they-
Island IPA recently?
No.
Well, you're not an IPA
Well,
fan.
here's my thing.
But I
Why
have.
buy it and change it? That's what I don't understand.
Right. No, so that's the thing. Well,
Like buy it
so-
and take all the money.
So let me
change it.
finish what I'm saying. So that was what they were doing at the time. It was they were going to buy these craft breweries and take them over and make them run the way AB runs, right? So then when AB bought Devil's Backbone,
Devil's Backbone. Yep.
that's what everybody thought was going to happen.
But they didn't.
Now
right?
I know. I shouldn't say I'm friendly with Steve Crandall or Jason Oliver from Devil's Backbone, but I know them, and if I walked up to them, they would know my name.
Right.
So I talked to them when this all happened, and they're like, "No, none of that shit's going to happen the way it happened at Goose. You know what happens? We get access to all their technology,
all their distributors.
all their ingredients,
But
all their
isn't that a
distributors."
good thing?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And
So-
where we
so-
always took the angle.
Right,
From.
so-
Goose Island was the one
things-
that got destroyed.
Right.
in a-
So
in a
things
weird
have
sense.
changed dramatically. So
after
I'm-
the goose shit show, basically.
Right. So I would love
I get
to
it.
get yelled at for selling out if somebody were to come in and offer me the money.
Well, so
But-
there's
'Cause
a
it doesn't-
question I did want to ask you. Somebody comes in, right, from Ambev or somebody else. They say, we want to buy you. You've got the cachet. You've got the beers. Would you be willing to, and I know this is a loaded question, so you don't, but obviously there's got to be some amount of control you'd have to retain, or you wouldn't even consider such an option. But do you see it as a negative or a positive to get purchased by a big organization?
So it's a tough thing in the craft community right now to say
Sure.
that you're owned by InBev.
Of course.
Now, what has happened, I mean, if you look at what's happened over the past couple weeks, like Bold Rock just got sold.
Yeah.
Yep.
New Belgium sold.
Yep. Fat Tire.
New
also.
Belgian worked out very well for the employees.
Of
mind
course,
you,
because
they
it's
were
employee
employee-owned.
thing, and
So
they bought
all
them
these
for
dudes just got pensions.
Right. No, that was great.
Like, everybody who
That was
worked there
great.
got a pension.
But
Our
they're-
take
but
was
they're-
always like, let's get this good beer out to the masses
But
without
it's-
changing the
It's
things. Like
if they
with the
don't fuck it
distributors.
up. That's
Right,
true.
right.
you
So
don't
if you're
fuck it
able
up.
to retain control, then that's
Yes.
great. So what I like the most are like the private equity firms that have gone in and have formed these conglomerates within a handful of craft breweries. So you have the one that has like Victory and Southern Tier, the one that they were the ones that just
Yeah.
bought Bold Rock.
Yeah.
You know, those sorts of things. I think those are great.
But they get it.
right. they get it, and it's not
It's
not
hands
trying.
off. It's just here's some better tech, here's some better
And
ability.
maybe here's a little more cash flow.
Right.
And we can help you source better stuff.
And we can
but
help
that's it.
you get into our distribution
But you
footprint.
go do you.
Like,
Yeah.
did you guys know? I mean, I don't know if you drink cider, but that Bold Rock was
Oh,
the
yeah, my
second
wife
biggest
crushes it.
cidery in the country.
This
Oh, yeah.
is literally the second biggest
crazy.
cidery
Right?
in the
so
state.
I went
Cider
when I
drinker,
was working at
Stu.
when I was working at Total Wine. We went to Bold Rock's facility in probably 2012 or 2013 when they were in the little tiny red barn.
Yep.
Yes.
And he told
There-
me the quantity he was doing then. I'm like, you're fucking shitting me. There's no way you're producing this much liquid out of this tiny place. And then I went back 2 years later, and they had the big facility. I walk in, and I'm looking at how much he's bottling that day, and I'm like, huh. And the fact that it's now the second largest cider producer behind Sam Adams'
Angry
Orchard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Because everywhere. So I'm a big cider guy. I'm a big seltzer guy because I try to stay gluten free for the most part. These guys hate it when I bring it up. But anyways,
Gluten intolerance.
I go around traveling, going to different bars or whatever, and Angry Orchard is the Bud Light of ciders.
Yeah.
It is.
No, it's the natural light of ciders.
Okay, whatever you want to say. It's the it's just the like, come on, give me something different. But
It's everywhere.
what I was going to tell you is, what I was going to ask you is, the notion of selling out is kind of wrong. It's not,
But that goes across all industries. So I was listening to something this morning, and they were talking about.
Inside the Powerhouse podcast?
As a matter of fact, I didn't know that existed until about 6 hours ago. No offense,
Fair enough.
but
Story of my life.
That's the first time we've heard that.
It was
Yeah.
it was a stupid conversation about the.
So you say you're local.
Here I've been a fan of theirs for years. They don't even know?
It was the American Music Awards was on TV
we were
last
there.
week.
Yeah.
Were you?
Of course.
I missed your broadcast. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
but
Well, you
we're
have
in the
to
back.
subscribe.
Ozzy got on, and he's done a song with Post Malone and
Oh, he looked a mess.
he's in
Post
bad shape.
Malone or
Yeah.
Ozzy?
Well,
Post
Ozzy
Malone
looked-
always looks
Just
like
give
a mess.
Post Malone 20 years.
But it was who's the other rapper? I can't remember who the other rapper is. Todd, whatever. But
Ozzy was sitting down the entire time.
right.
Dude,
well, he
we
just
need
had
a
an
rapper
accident.
just
Yeah.
named Todd.
But
That would be a dope
but
ass
the conversation was, did Ozzy sell out?
No.
No, Ozzy's still fucking Ozzy.
Ozzy's
Yeah.
And he's
Ozzy.
always going to be Ozzy.
See,
Right.
So
I'm so
what's the
glad to
thing?
hear you say this because this is exactly the stance we've taken. You're not selling out if you just happen to make a little more money, but you're still true to you.
That's
That's
the key.
not a
true to
sellout.
you, true to
And
what
you
you've
could
always done.
And you could
Yeah.
reach more people.
If
If you're
you're-
grunge and then decide that you now want to wear a suit, well, you fucked up. You blew it. But if you're grunge and now you got more money and you're still grunge, well, that's pretty dope. Like, that's just getting more money.
Or if you collab with somebody, that's
Because
just
let's be honest, none of us got in these industries to not make money. So if somebody comes and says, we're going to give you the creative authority to be you, but you can still get more money, well,
And-
that's a win-win.
and reach a much larger audience.
Yes.
Right.
I always equate it to like if you're in a menial, shitty 9-to-5 job and somebody says, I'm going to give you a whole lot more money to go do this instead of that, that's technically the same thing as what
Yeah.
people call selling out.
But if I
no,
still
I'm
get
doing
to
my
do the
job,
same
I'm doing it
menial
better.
job,
well,
great.
that's the whole thing with the beer industry that kind of irritates me. Like, I get liking your local place and calling it the best beer ever, but to be mad that they're getting outside of
Mad they
this
got
zip
money.
code or this state or this, quadrant of the if I have good beer, I want it to be across the nation.
Well, I
Like,
think it's the process that people go. Like if the customers feel like you skipped a couple of steps,
yeah,
You're not going to get there.
yeah,
yeah.
No, but that,
And-
you know
and-
what? That's fair, though.
And
That's
you
But
also,
some people hit the lottery. That's just how it works.
But you also have to look at the age that we're in now. What if we had this conversation 20 years ago before social media?
yeah,
Nobody would have known any different.
no, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
We
Right.
get fed so much information.
If-
I mean,
if-
I
if
shouldn't know.
So and
that
so
this
would have
happened.
bought so and so,
Right.
and you never would have known.
If
about it.
Anheuser-Busch owned Goose Island 20 years ago, nobody would have fucking known.
Yeah,
No.
Nor
And it
would they
wouldn't have
care.
mattered. Nor would they care.
That's
now,
exactly right.
everybody knows everything that happens.
Yeah, it's wild. But what I find so interesting about this scenario is that Ballast Point sold out. Air quotes.
I want to know what the number is.
So don't we all? Because no, it's not theirs.
Right,
Stu.
no, it's not. It hasn't been
Because
posted yet.
here's what's
but
up.
Constellation Brands is a publicly traded company, so that
So
number
that will
come out.
That's a fact. That's very fair. But the reality is that this guy who owned this pissant brewery,
He's some Australian.
he
wacko.
managed to. He was playing golf with somebody from Constellation.
I saw that.
And he was like, hey, you guys are losing money on Ballast Point. And the guy said, yeah, we are. And he's like, well, if you're ever interested in selling them,
I'll buy it.
let me know. Well, that dude called him up and was like, hey, actually, we're losing a tremendous amount of money. And the reason being is because they deviated from everything that Ballast Point should have been. They started opening bars and breweries, and they did it all over the country. And they increased in a way. So they did the
They
exact
outmarketed themselves.
they did the exact opposite of what they should be doing.
Yeah.
They didn't make for better distribution. Well, they did. But they didn't make for better tolerances and things like this. They went, we should do restaurants and bars, and we should do all these things. And they started investing all this crazy money in bullshit. And they made them the Rainforest Cafe or whatever the hell it is
So
of the brewery world.
My favorite story of all time in that vein. So I spent my 20s living in the Outer Banks. I owned a wine
Well
shop.
done.
That's
I do
a
whatever.
awesome spot in the world to live.
But there was a restaurant down there forever called the Sands. I don't know if you remember it.
Yeah.
Right? So I was living down there. And I had a bunch of friends in the restaurant business. I had been in the wine business, beer business down there, whatever. So this group of kids, they were in their early 20s.
What years was this?
This would have been 90, probably around 2000.
Yeah, late
Would be my
90s,
guess.
2000.
Would be my guess. So I can't remember the woman's name that owned the Sands, but she'd owned it forever. It had been around for 30 years. Probably the most successful restaurant on the beach. And she was done. Like, she didn't have anybody to take it over for her, so she put it up in market. I think it was $900,000 she was selling this restaurant for. These kids got the money together, bought the restaurant, and changed everything.
Boom.
Yeah.
From the name
Had to put their own
to
stink on
the
it.
restaurant. Had to put their own stank
Yeah,
on
don't
it.
do that.
And we're out of business in 3 months.
Of course.
And this was a business that did.
But that's
millions of
basically
dollars.
what they did to Ballast. They
When
came
you-
in, they changed the whole game, and they ruined it.
And when
Now
you pay
here-
X amount
Exactly.
of dollars for a business, you're
Stick
paying
with
for
it.
that history of that business, the clientele of that business. For you to go and flip script like that, you're throwing away. You're starting
Exactly.
anew. Like
Exactly.
So years ago on this podcast, we talked about how Ballast Point had sold out.
air
And
quotes.
Now, here we are, full circle. They're selling for pennies on the dollar. I'm assuming. We don't know this.
Got to
But
be.
to a
They're-
brewery that has no distribution, like no footprint, even
Right,
in their
so
own
the,
hometown.
So the questions that people have been asking me all day is, all right, so along with this whole thing with Constellation, Ballast Point had a pretty large liquor production facility
Okay, I didn't know
that
this.
and a bunch of brands that had close to nationwide distribution.
So real quick, just so you know, 2015, Ballast Point sold out for $1 billion to a guy.
Right.
And then in this new transaction,
It's undisclosed, right?
it's undisclosed the amount, but Ballast Point's facilities that's in Daleville, Virginia, was not part of the transaction.
Right. So they
So that's like a $48
there's
million dollar.
certain-
So
okay.
it's more like naming and marketing rights
right.
that
so
they're taking over
so
without.
they
changing.
they closed
our fact
they
checker.
closed the
That's what Stu
Daleville
does.
facility to the public a couple of months ago. It's purely a production facility. It's purely their East Coast production facility
Right.
as of a couple of months ago. So that wasn't included in the sale.
Right. The sale. So $8.5 million is an estimate of what they're trying to do for maybe the name, like the marketing, purchasing rights. But who knows? It says it won't be disclosed until 2020. But
Yeah,
either way,
no, I can't.
either way, the facility
can't.
was not part of the deal. This is purely.
But they
somebody's gonna do
their
mark-
facility in San Diego is gigantic.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
what they just got. This little brewery just went from little to big. The funny thing is Constellation, they just moved some chips around and just moved them back.
Right,
Like
so-
it didn't affect them because
so
they're a conglomerate.
I've been dealing with in some form or fashion Constellation brands since the mid '90s. So back in the day, it was called Canandaigua Brands because they were based in Canandaigua, New York, up in the Finger Lakes region.
Okay.
Bring back Wild Irish Rose. That was their number one brand, right?
Hell yeah.
So
now we're
so
talking.
they've grown
Full circle.
I was just getting ready to say that.
There you
Full
go, Heather.
circle.
So they have grown that business in the wine business to being a ridiculously major player. Like I'm not sure what at one point they owned all the Mandavi brands. I know his family bought some of them back, but they are huge, and something like a floundering Ballast Point doesn't matter to them at all.
No, and that's why I'm saying they can liquidate that. But it's
Or they
interesting
could-
to see the progression from small brewery to being bought out for the largest sum of money that we'd ever seen at the time to now being sold for pennies on the dollar.
I was going to say,
and
can it
back-
be like
Right, but
penny
the
stocks,
Kings-
though? Can they go back and
They
let
just
them
did?
do what they're do?
Well, see,
Did
this
they
is
let them do what they do?
So they
and
never changed
build
the-
back up?
They never changed the beer that I noticed. The grapefruit sculpin has always been the same shitty beer that it always was. It's honestly, it's a little too much for me. It's
So
a
where'd they go
monster.
wrong? That's
Because they started opening fucking Fridays.
so they
But
still might make
it's
money.
a marketing and distribution issue.
Will they make money? Is what I'm asking. Like, do they
Yes,
have a
the
chance-
new brewery will make a fortune because now they own the Ballast Point name, which still has great beers.
but it's Kings
what
and
they're not
Convicts
gonna
who
own-
bought them.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
But what they're
They
not
don't
gonna
have the
own-
capital to take over
You don't know
the
that.
distribution.
No. So they brought in two unnamed investors
Oh,
that helped.
Right. So there's a large amount of private equity that had to go
Yes.
into this. So
It's
the
Heather
the one little
of the situation. Like Heather came, but did you?
The one little
you-
thing I
you
read
said
is-
that you were able to find investors, right? Like so they talked
She's
to
an
Heather.
He
Yeah,
is an
I'm an
investor.
investor.
So they talked to like the Heathers of the world, and they bought the brewery.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. But
So-
now what they have is an opportunity to have an iconic name on a brewery that literally has no capital in Chicago. And they're able to now move it forward. But they're saying they're going to maintain the restaurants, breweries that were built. But I think Constellation got in over their head. They thought they could do more with it
So
and create
so
the
th-
Fridays.
you have to bring the whole timing of everything into account. Right? So you look back at 2015. So there was a ton of stuff going on in the craft beer community.
Yeah.
The growth was exponential and nobody saw an end to it. So at the same time you saw Stone
Yeah, the
come,
bubble was growing.
you saw Stone come to Richmond, you saw Green Flash go to the beach, you saw Ballast Point go to Roanoke. You saw all these things happen,
Yeah.
and then the next year happened, and where the craft beer community went from regional to local to hyper-local.
Yes.
And so all this growth happened at the same time. Then you saw some of these crazy acquisitions happen at the same
But
time.
something like a Ballast
It was-
Point was regional. It,
was
seemed
ju-
like a
it was
really
just,
good
it was
deal.
just shitty timing. Same thing that two things happened with Green Flash. It was shitty timing, and it was the county of Virginia Beach that fucked them.
man.
But
I got my own issues with Green Flash, but that's a whole nother-
but no. I mean, it's just by the time they got open, they had missed their window.
yes.
That was that was the city that cost them 18 months to get open.
That's
Oh,
Virginia
that's
Beach.
gonna
That's-
cost you,
Right. So
especially when timing is of the essence.
You're-
right.
Bureaucracy.
So you have all those things, and the whole sale of Green Flash happens at in that same window.
Yeah.
So, it's. I don't. At the time, nobody blamed Constellation. They're like, maybe I was a little bit high, but no. At the time,
Oh, it seemed high even at the time.
it seemed high at the time, but you're like, nobody was growing.
But they were
faster.
cutting edge.
No, because they had
Nobody was growing
they had
faster
those
than Ballast
grapefruit
Point at the time.
sculpins and all that. They
Yeah.
were doing
I mean,
an
they
IPA
were selling
thing,
$18 6-pack,
and people were
12-ounce
buying
bottles
them.
like crazy.
People were buying
Yeah.
them.
Richmond, Virginia.
But now here they are, owned by the cousin of Malort.
Malort. Oh my God.
Are you familiar with Malort?
Nah.
Oh my
Oh.
God!
I feel like I should be.
That's
We're
another
going-
story
but I
for
may.
another
It's
time.
not a beer; it's a liquor, and we are going to bring you home. We're gonna,
And we
we're
will,
gonna,
we
we're
will
gonna,
bring you in for part 2 of this, which would be.
Yeah,
bring
we're
you-
gonna have to bring you over to the Pallet House. We're gonna feed you full of Malort.
Yeah,
We'll
for
bring
sure.
him in and have him critique all of that.
So I appreciate you indulging me on that conversation because I thought it was very interesting that a craft beer had been bought at the top and then had been sold at the bottom. And I think that this is an interesting universe in the craft beer world, and you have a very unique view on that kind of sale.
It's a ridiculously crazy time.
It's
when you think about how many breweries there are in the country right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's the most
everywhere.
Ever. It's the most everywhere.
Well, all the heavyweights are getting they see a dent in their overall sales, and now they're like, well, we need to buy to keep
but
what
it's even gotten to the point where the craft community is we're big enough that we actually have a legitimate voice.
Right.
Even 4 or 5 years ago, we were 8-9%. Now we're like
now you're challenging
16-17% of the market.
Well, that's why they're buying you up.
But that's just in volume. In dollars, we're close to 30%.
Yeah, I was gonna say because you're out dollaring them all day long.
Right. So we now have a voice, but I mean, don't underestimate.
Yeah.
No,
Miller,
for
Coors,
sure.
and Bud, because they've all teamed up.
No, because you know what? They're going to figure it out.
I mean,
and they're not going to lose. They're going to
where there aren't monopolies. It's the same company. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yeah.
Oh
Right?
yeah, we're full aware.
Right. In this country, they have to be separate, but everywhere else, it's the same fucking company. So they're all trying to figure out how to close me down, and that's where.
No. Let's be honest. You guys are kicking ass in this market, and that's what matters. You start to build a following here, and it'll start to permeate out in the community, and that is what allows you to get to that point.
I know we're trying to close it up. I just want to say
one
other thing, and then I'm going to be done. So we're lucky enough that we're distributed locally by an Anheuser-Busch wholesaler, right?
There you go.
So, but they are different than most. So they're run by people that understand what actually sells and what makes them money.
Yeah, they see value in
so
what
who
you
would that
do.
be?
It's Brown Distributor.
That's what I thought.
Right?
Brown.
Yeah,
So
that would be the one that seems to care.
They sell the percentage of craft beer that they sell is among the largest of any AB wholesaler in the country, right? But when you get out of this market, and AB bonuses their distributors for selling less than 10% craft. Total,
Wow.
Right?
That's
Seriously?
dirty.
Oh,
Jason,
no,
you
dirty.
and I are about to have a whole conversation.
Damn.
that
sidebar,
is a 100% fact.
I feel like
That
it's
is
a
wrong.
mafia situation.
That is
Distribution.
wrong.
So
That's
before we signed with Brown, I went to the guy because I've been dealing with Brown for years, working for Total Wine, so I knew everybody. So I went to the guy. I said, before I sign this contract, I want to know what this is.
Yeah,
is this
you're gonna
real?
squeeze me out.
And he's like, no, this is for real. We don't give a shit. We understand
Money's money.
We understand what
Yeah.
makes money. But you go into some
Oh, you
wherever.
see, I want to get into a whole bells
Podunk-
conversation, but I don't have
Podunk
time.
Village in Arkansas. It's one little tiny AB distributor, and he's like, I can make $1 million for not selling craft beer. You're going to give me that, and that's free money?
Yeah.
Of course they're going to.
Yeah.
So that's what you come up against when you talk about breweries that sell out to AB.
Yeah.
May not happen in my market, but who knows? Next year I may decide I need to
But it's the
distribute it.
distribution in this state that makes it so weird.
Right, but next year maybe I want to distribute it into North Carolina,
Yeah.
and I'm going to go into Asheville, right?
Wish
Craft beer
motherfucker
Hofbräu,
would.
Yeah.
right? I do too. But who knows? So the distributor I decide to deal with may have one of those deals. So
that's the archaic nature of our distribution system. But I don't want.
That's a whole nother story.
All right. One last thing, and then I'm done. The third largest lobby in the state of Virginia is the Virginia Craft Beer Wholesalers lobby.
I knew
in
that.
Virginia,
actually.
I'm assuming behind
know that.
tobacco, and then what?
Probably NRA would be my guess. Would be number 2.
Fucking Virginia.
Love
Respect.
USA.
So I just want to say real quick, because I know we're trying to get out of here, but Heather, seriously, thank you.
Thank
for
you, Heather, so
having
much.
us
Thank you.
come in here and invade the space and do this live. And I mean,
Jason,
Jason's just a wealth of knowledge. You can't even. That's
Honestly, I'm about to spend I'm about to piss away the next 2 hours with Jason in the corner, talking about the bells issue.
Jason's going
Wasn't I
home.
supposed to leave an hour ago?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, you were the one who was
Yeah,
like,
he only had 45 minutes.
He literally said, like,
He had
we got to
30,
get this
45
done.
minutes at the start of this.
And
I
was
get a
like,
little
we can
chatty.
do that.
It happens.
And then he ended up bringing us fantastic beers. And I cannot
Yes.
say I'm.
Yeah, I don't. Did you
cannot-
ever rate the goodness?
So the goodness
I
is
heard
actually
4.5.
Yeah, which is obscenely high.
Yeah.
for
I
any
don't
beer.
care,
I know, but I know that
and
you
I'm
love it.
not. I'm not a beer guy.
As far as I'm concerned, the goodness is a fantastic beer. What I love about it is it did have a mellowness before the bourbon kicked in, and that's what unfortunately I don't think happens enough with these bourbon beers, is that you lose so much to the bourbon. That didn't happen here. And that is why I brought up the Blue Mountain Brewery.
Concealed Darkness.
Yes. I think it'd be interesting to put it up against it
Nice.
because
We all should try that.
that is my favorite beer before tonight of the bourbon barreled stouts in the state. I would love to put this up against it because I think this had more stout before the bourbon, and I think that leads with more bourbon than stout. But I don't know until I try them head to head.
Well, I tell you what, take that bottle with you
I like your attitude.
and try them side by side and
Just
report
one.
back to me.
Nice.
Yeah, because I think that
I'm
this
curious
is
because I haven't had Concealed Darkness in a couple of years, so I'm
Dark
curious.
Hollow. Dark Hollow.
Hollow.
Right, but it's the Concealed Darkness Dark Hollow
Yes.
released this weekend. It's the big pig roast that they're
But
doing
I
this
think
weekend.
that it's right there, but I think this is a better beer. But I don't know that until I put them head to head.
Yeah, no.
I think this
taste
is
them
the
head to
better
head
beer, though.
and give me an honest feedback. I'm curious. Like I said,
Nice.
I would love to
that's
give you
my
honest
favorite
feedback.
year-round
Yeah.
barrel-aged stout. I love
Amazing.
that beer.
It
It's
really
great.
is.
If
It's
we
the
do that
best
deli
in the
though,
state.
just get Jason to come on.
I'm just
and-
saying it's the best in the state before tonight.
Yeah, let me
That's
know
all
where to
I
be.
have.
I'll come
That's phenomenal.
ramble on a mic
Well,
for 20
I
minutes.
Actually, Jason, I have a feeling you're going to be a
I
regular.
think y'all hooked him.
And Heather, you're more than welcome to hang out.
So
I love having you on the show. You're fantastic. Thank you so
I think
much.
the goodness is no way. I didn't rank it yet, but I think it's aptly named. I think it's a delicious beer. I would only ever drink one because it is boozy.
Oh no! But that's the thing with those beers.
But
You
it
can't
tastes
drink
amazing.
a dozen of them.
But
this
I would
is,
chase it with a
this is an
Paradise.
Not with that
aperitif.
attitude,
Yeah.
you can't.
I'll fucking show you. I'll throw up on my shoes.
We're putting you outside.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Heather has relegated me to the outside. Well, that didn't
So-
go
Go
well.
to the outdoor patio.
So real quick, Heather, just what's going on with Kindred in the next month? What's happening? Anything we need to know? Because by the time Brendan gets this out next Monday,
Well, if we get one more glass of goodness, I'll put this out Friday.
so
if
let's
we
just
don't,
fast.
I'll put it out tomorrow.
Let's fast forward between now and New Year. What's happening with you guys?
So going to next weekend because it's not going to get out.
It'll be out this week.
Okay.
This
Be
week,
out before
this week
Friday.
means
So
Friday.
we have
Thursday, Friday.
the Bobcats on Friday.
Live music.
Yeah,
live
live music, good
Always
jazz,
good
swing,
live
rockabilly.
Every band y'all have here, honestly, fantastic.
Right. So then jumping to the next weekend on the 13th, we've got Redemption Barbecue, Tin Can Fish Band.
If you're into the dead and fish, Tin Can Fish Band's great.
Sold.
be here.
They should play a little Panic, but that's just my own personal demon. Go ahead.
They very well may.
On the 14th of December, we'll have Third Rail for live music and Right on Time Mobile Diner. And then on the 15th, we'll have Pat O'Brien with Hungry Hungry Arrow.
Shut your head. He played my
Pat.
wedding.
That's Brendan's guy.
Pat.
Pat
Yeah.
O'Brien.
Pat's here every 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Love Pat
I've
O'Brien.
known,
We
I've
love
known
Pat.
Pat like, well, more than 15 years.
Literally played my wedding. You know, my worst Pat O'Brien story? I watched the Bartman incident as a Cubs fan. I watched the Bartman incident happen with Pat O'Brien playing, and I was looking up at the screen, and Pat O'Brien literally goes, "What the fuck?" Stopped singing when
I don't think I've ever heard Pat O'Brien utter a cuss word.
Yeah, well, apparently
It
Pat
caused him.
O'Brien has a little bit of Cubs fan in him because he was furious that Bartman
So
stole the
he's
ball from
so
Moise
Pat's
Salou.
playing the 15th,
Pat's playing the 15th, yes.
and then what's anything else between here and New Year's?
I mean,
or
I'll
you
just
guys-
give another push for Comedy Night on December 19th. which will be a great night.
Troy could be a headliner for the comedy night.
I could. I'm hilarious.
You should come
Not
out.
at all.
How dare
Come out.
you?
It'll be a great night. Right before, we'll have the Motivators on Friday the 20th with Freedom A's food truck. Saturday the 21st, we'll have Brazen Smoke and the Mike Lucio Band.
Nice.
And is there any new
Obviously-
releases between now and the end of the year besides?
Oh, yeah.
So we've got a winter ale that's going to come out,
December 20th.
somewhere around the 20th.
Well, don't slip on the Bright and Merry, and that's
No,
coming out
Merry
this
and
week.
Bright.
That
Yeah,
is,
Merry
that
and
is
Bright.
not to be messed with. The Merry and Bright. Damn it, I called it the Bright and Merry
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
Stu-
Mary
stupid.
Bright will be
Son
out
of a
on
bitch.
Friday, 2 days from now, whatever.
The
today's
day it
date
comes
is.
out,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah,
That's a great
We've got this
beer.
really cool winter ale coming out on the 20th. It's essentially a Belgian dark ale. The yeast comes from RVA Yeast Labs here. I don't know if you guys have ever talked
Yeah.
about them. It's a guy named Maliki who runs this cool little yeast place downtown. He harvests yeast from all around town and then propagates them up so that you can use them in a beer. So the yeast that we're using was actually harvested from Swift Creek Berry Farms down off of Genito Road.
Yes.
Nice.
I know exactly where that is.
So this beer is a 6% Belgian dark ale. Really cool.
6% for a
Yeah.
Belgian dark ale. See,
Yeah.
now we're dancing.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic.
Really cool flavors and aromas of like cinnamon and nutmeg, but finish is really dry and crisp. It's really cool, but it's still sort of warming at the same time.
Nice.
It's a great
I
wintertime
love it.
ale.
I'd be
All right.
remiss if I didn't say thank you so much, Heather,
Yes.
Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Gracious,
for
very
having us
gracious.
out here at Kindred Spirit.
I had fun.
This was a blast.
There's a wealth of
And
knowledge.
Thank you for hosting the whole M4K team. These guys don't usually have mustaches, but for 1 month a year, well, we all look like shit, but our hearts in the right
Yeah,
place.
and you
So
guys-
you've been growing that for a month? Is that what you're
This
trying
is
to say?
a 1 month mustache.
Wow.
Yeah, I get that mine is a little gray, but don't you start throwing stones because yours is gray too.
It wasn't a matter of being gray. It was just a little thin.
Oh!
Yeah, this seems to be a common theme lately. Hey, we're wrapping up here, and he just clowned my mustache. Yeah, see, all these guys understand that my mustache
Hey,
is
but
a
you
little
guys,
thin.
thanks again for having us. You're part of this, hopefully
Yeah, so thank you
$400,000.
for joining us for the M4K event.
Oh,
we, as awkward as this seems, we take this very seriously, and we are glad to be raising money for
I mean, these
children's
guys look
charities.
normal out here, but they usually don't have mustaches.
So
Yeah,
I
sure
do
how to
want to
take
send
that.
it. Well, thank you guys so much for
Yes,
hosting
thank
the
you.
entire crew.
Very gracious.
My
hosting
pleasure.
us,
Thank you guys for
allowing
coming
us
out.
to do this, and thank you for allowing us to taste all of these great beers. This was fantastic. If you guys haven't had a chance, go over to Kindred Spirits, check it out. It is my favorite brewery in town, and that's not just because it's close to my house. It's because it really is fucking better.
Yes.
So
They
check
treat
it
you
out.
better.
You would be impressed.
I want to give a shout out to Evan, Kara, Ben, my brother from another mother, and Mike Clark for their donations today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. I know Mike donated to a lot of people here, so thank you for your donations.
I'll thank Mike personally. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Is
If you
that how
haven't
you
had a
roll?
chance to head over to the Facebook page, please do give us a like, or you can always hit us up at ITPH Podcast on Instagram or somewhere else.
I don't know. MySpace?
Twitter.
I don't know where the kids hang out.
You can always find us on Venmo if you
Tinder.
want to send us some dollars at
ITP, no, Inside the Pallet House.
Inside the Pallet House. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be talking to you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
Peace out.
That was a really good podcast, don't you think?
No, it's see here. This is all.